Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. Today we will see what if strong Naruto civilian council bashing. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. Naruto's and Sasuke's attacks hit straight on, creating a large explosion that sent both boys flying in opposite directions. Both Kyuubi's one-tailed form and Sasuke's cursed seal form faded, and both of them hit the ground hard. There was silence for a few seconds before Naruto slowly got himself up. He weakly moved himself over to Sasuke, who was unconscious. Naruto grunted, "I'm taking you home now, Teme." With that, Naruto fell backwards into unconsciousness. A couple of seconds after this, there was the sound of the wind shifting and a mysterious black figure appeared. The figure was cloaked in a black haori and a pair of black pants as well. The figure's head was cloaked, so his eyes could be seen, nor could his mouth or nose be seen due to the cloak hiding them. He casually put his hand on his chin and spoke out loud to himself. "Blonde hair, check. Whisker marks, check. Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, check." The figure, whose voice revealed him as a young man, took a breath of relief. Finally found the kid. He didn't make it easy. The man walked over and picked up the young Jinchuriki and put him on his back with the boy's head on his shoulder. The man smiled under his mask. "No need to worry, kid. That hellhole of a village won't be bothering you again." Just as the figure was about to leave, Kakashi jumped down into the valley beside the fallen Uchiha. He had a kunai ready. "Put Naruto down," Kakashi ordered. The man didn't seem impressed. "Who are you to make demands of me? I am a Jonin of Konoha, and I am ordering you to drop the boy and leave, or I shall take him back by force." Kakashi could feel the man's eye pierce his soul even though he couldn't see them. The man held out his left arm and formed his hand as if he was about to flick the air. "Be gone, boy." With that, the man flicked his figure and Kakashi suddenly felt like he had been punched in the face. He flew back but did manage to regain his footing. His eyes shot up ready to fight his opponent, but to his surprise and horror the man and Naruto were gone. The only trace left was a slight trail of settling dust falling down as if the man had jumped sky high. Kakashi quickly summoned Pakun. "Pakun, someone has taken Naruto. I need you to track them." Pakun quickly sniffed around, but he turned to Kakashi sadly. "Kakashi, there isn't any trail to follow." Kakashi blinked in surprise. "What do you mean there isn't a trail to follow?" "Just that. Whoever it was left no trace of himself or Naruto here to follow." Kakashi spent a couple of seconds taking it all in before he screamed out his frustration and slammed his fist into the ground below. His fist was bleeding, but he didn't care. He had failed his student. "Naruto." Kakashi whispered sadly as a single tear fell from his lone eye. The retrieval team solemnly made their way through Konoha to the Hokage Tower. Very few people noticed the absence of Naruto, and everyone noticed that the Uchiha prodigy was slung over Choji's shoulder. When the team reached the Hokage Tower, Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Shizune were waiting for them. "We got back to Uchiha, brat," Choji said grudgingly. "Well, at least the civilian council will be happy," Shizune grunted. "Where's Naruto?" came Jiraiya's voice. Tsunade and Shizune looked at the retrieval team and also noticed the absence of the blonde knucklehead. "Kakashi," Tsunade said in a dangerously low voice. "Where is Naruto?" Kakashi took a deep breath. He was taken. Alarmed, Jiraiya shot towards the copy nin. "Taken? By who? Describe them?" "Master Jiraiya, he was taken by only one person. He was a cloaked man entirely in black. However, I couldn't identify him." "His cloak," Jiraiya stated. "Did it have anything on it?" "No, it didn't. It was just plain black. So most likely it wasn't Akatsuki," Jiraiya thought to himself. Tsunade was glaring holes into the Jonin. "If you saw him, why didn't you stop him?" "Hokage-sama, I did try to stop him." Tsunade slammed her fisting into her desk, breaking it. "Then why isn't he here? I don't know how he did it, but he finger-flicked the air in front of himself and it suddenly felt like Guy had given me a dynamic entry straight to my face. By the time I had regained my bearing, he was gone. I summoned Pakun to track him, but he couldn't find any trace of either the man or of Naruto." Tsunade and Jiraiya blinked in surprise. "Pakun couldn't find any trace of them?" "Nothing?" Kakashi shook his head no. There was a moment of silence before a large shout of frustration and the sound of a fist connecting to a wall could be heard across Konoha from the Hokage Tower. Surprising to everyone in their room, the perpetrator was Jiraiya. Jiraiya. Shizune began, but she was cut off as Jiraiya turned around and positioned himself on the windowsill. "Jiraiya, where are you going?" Tsunade asked with authority. Jiraiya, however, barely even glanced at her. "To find my godson." With that, Jiraiya was gone, leaving everyone in the room in stunned silence. After Jiraiya left, the retrieval team left to take the Uchiha to the hospital. When they got there, Sakura was waiting for them. "Sasuke-kun," Sakura shouted as she ran up to Choji, who was still carrying him. "What the hell happened to him?" "Sasuke wouldn't come back willingly, so Naruto fought him into unconsciousness to get him back for you," Neji said with a slight glare. "So here's your damn Uchiha traitor." "Sasuke isn't a traitor," Sakura yelled at him. "It was caused by the cursed seal. I thought you knew this." "And what do you mean that demon fought him into unconsciousness?" "I told Naruto to bring Sasuke back, not beat him back. He didn't have a choice in the matter," Shino stated. "He shouldn't have harmed Sasuke-kun." "Will you just shut up, you troublesome banshee?" Shikamaru said angrily, surprising everyone with his actual show of effort. "Naruto's gone now because of that request of yours." Unfortunately, Hinata happened to be passing by at that exact moment and heard what Shikamaru said. She stared at her friends in horror. Neji noticed her and elbowed Shikamaru's arm. Shikamaru turned and saw Hinata, a horrified expression on her face. Troublesome, Shikamaru thought. Hinata. What happened to Naruto? Hinata asked, terrified of the answer. Naruto managed to beat Sasuke, Neji began to tell her. But apparently some arrived right after both fell unconscious and took Naruto. Managed to beat Kakashi, too. He told us that the man performed single flick of the finger in midair and suddenly it felt like Gai-sensei did a dynamic entry straight into his face. Many of them winced at that. Hinata looked at her cousin. "So you don't know if he's alright?" Neji shook his head. Sakura scoffed, "Good riddance. Who need that pathetic demonic dobi anyway?" The rest of the Konoha had 12 members that were there all glared. But before anyone could retorted, Sakura suddenly fell victim to a very strong blow to her stomach that sent her to her knees. Sakura looked up and to her surprise and to the surprise of the retrieval team, the attacker was Hinata. "How dare you, Sakura," Hinata said angrily and without a stutter, much to the shock of those present. "How dare you? Naruto risked his life to get your precious Uchiha back for you and this is how you thank him? I'd sooner partner up with members of the Sound Village than with you." Everyone was shocked. They had never seen Hinata act like this at all. With her speech done, Hinata stormed off. The retrieval team couldn't help but feel sorry for her. The love of her life was now Kami knows where and in Kami knows condition and she couldn't do anything for him. Sakura soon managed to recover from Hinata's strike. What the hell is that freak's problem? How could she stand up for that demon? The retrieval team glared at her. "Sakura. You better get out of our line of sight or we will hurt you." Sakura blinked at her comrades. "What?" Neji began counting down. 5, 4, 3, 2. "Alright, I get it. I just don't see why that demon's so important to you." With that she walked away. Shikamaru sighed, "Troublesome. I'd have to agree with you there." The retrieval team looked up to see Kakashi walking up to them. Strangely, the orange book he always had wasn't in sight. "Sorry about my student. It's not your fault," Neji told the copy nin. "Choji, take the Uchiha traitor inside." Choji nodded and went inside. Neji, Shikamaru, and Shino looked at the ex-Anbu member. "So, what's going on?" Tsunade's in a council meeting discussing the mission's results. Shikamaru shook his head, "Troublesome." Tsunade looked around the room. The Shinobi Council, the Civilian Council, and the elders were all there. Tsunade looked at the council gathered and began. Less than 2 hours ago, the retrieval team managed to bring back Uchiha Sasuke to the village. Both sides of the council breathed a sigh of relief. One councilman spoke up. "Where is the Uchiha now?" "He is currently in Konoha Hospital being treated for severe injuries." With that sentence there was an uproar from the civilian side of the council. "What? Who harmed the Uchiha? He should be punished severely for such an act." "Silence!" Tsunade shouted and the entire civilian side instantly closed their mouths. "Let me continue. From report of the mission, Uchiha Sasuke did not come willingly and was beaten into submission by one Uzumaki Naruto." The council was instantly in an uproar again. "What? The demon brat was responsible for this? He tried to kill the Uchiha. That brat must be executed." "Shut up," Tsunade shouted. The council immediately shut up. Uzumaki Naruto is the reason I called you all here. So we're deciding his punishment, I guess. A more rounded member of the civilian council asked arrogantly. No, the problem is much more serious. Did the demon get loose? Asked Choza Akamichi worriedly. No, Tsunade said and with a deep breath uttered one phrase. Uzumaki Naruto, Jinchuriki of Kyuubi no Kitsune, was kidnapped when he fell unconscious after he defeated the Uchiha. There was a silence that followed. A stunned silence. Even Danzo seemed surprised at this turn of events. It was then the Hyuga Hiyashi spoke up. Who kidnapped him? Who took the boy? Tsunade sighed. Kakashi is the only one who saw the perpetrator, but Kakashi described him as a man entirely in black who didn't seem worried that a powerful Jonin like Kakashi was in his way. According to Kakashi, the man merely flicked the air in front of him and, again according to Kakashi, felt an impact to his skull that wasn't dissimilar to one of Guy's dynamic entries. The entire Shinobi Council and the elders winced at that. By the time Kakashi regained his bearing, the man was gone, as was Naruto. The council blinked. They knew that even if something as strong as one of Guy's dynamic entries struck Kakashi head-on, his recovery still would have been very quick. The man must have been incredibly fast for Kakashi not being able to see him. Kakashi summoned Pakun to track him, but the summon couldn't find any trace that the man was even there to begin with. The Shinobi Council gaped. Pakun couldn't track this guy? Who in this world could hide themselves so well that fast? HMPH, so the demon's gone. Who cares? A councilman spoke out loud, earning a glare from the Shinobi side and from the elders. Perhaps you don't realize what this means, do you? Shikaku, the Jonin commander, asked the civilian council member, who shook his head. It means, Hyuga Hiyashi continued, that Konoha has lost its advantage over the other shinobi nations. The civilian council looked on confused. Tsunade nodded her head. Yes, the other nations each have Jinchuriki, however, we had the strongest one, the Kyuubi. With it gone, Konoha is now greatly weakened. So what if the Kyuubi is gone? Shouted out another council member. We have the Uchiha brat. He can grow to take on a Jinchuriki. Really? Tsunade asked sarcastically. An Uchiha boy, a genin no less, has the strength to match up with a Jinchuriki, whom most of which are either Chunin and Jonin, and some have a very strong leash on their demons? Can that teenager match up against a being that took the Shodai Hokage to match up against? The council is silent. They didn't have a retort for this. Danzo then spoke up. We need to send out search teams for the Jinchuriki at once. Inoichi sighed. Really, you think our search teams will have any luck in finding someone that Kakashi was right on top of but still couldn't find any trace of him? And if what he says is true about his skill and speed, he's probably as far as Iwa by now. Besides, Tsunade spoke up. Jiraiya is out there frantically searching for him. He and his spy network will find him. For all our sake, I hope you are right, Hokage-sama. When Naruto awoke, the first he could see was only blurs and shapes. However, as the images got clearer, he could tell he was neither in his apartment nor in Konoha's hospital. He seemed to be in a stone room. He managed to sit up a bit, enduring some pain along the way, and he took a look at his surroundings. Despite it being made of rock, the room seemed rather homey. He was in a nice, comfortable bed. There was a dresser, a desk, and a small bookcase. The room was very nicely light up, adding to the homey feel of it. Huh, where am I? As if on cue, a door on the other side of the room opened and a man entered. He was cloaked and was wearing entirely black. Naruto blinked before narrowing his eyes. Who are you? Hold that thought, boy, let me get out of this. Naruto's eyes widened in surprise at the man's casual tone. Naruto watched as the man removed his cloak to reveal his face. The man looked around his mid-20s if Naruto had to guess, and had long black hair tied into a long ponytail that reached mid-back. The ponytail, however, looked so smooth and so narrow it would have been more accurate to call it a dragon tail. The man's eyes, however, were the most curious part of him. His eye color was midnight blue. That wasn't strange. It was the fact that the whites of his eyes were pitch black. Yet for some reason it didn't disturb Naruto for whatever reason. The air around him did seem to be an air of power, but it was still gentle. Now, what was your question again, boy? The man asked, raising an eyebrow. Naruto deadpanned. I asked who you were. Ah, right. The man held out his hand to Naruto. My name is Mahotsukai Kyozu, the mortal harbinger of Yami himself. At your service, of course. Naruto's eyes widened in shock. You serve Yami? As in, the god of darkness Yami? Now it was Kaosu's turn to deadpan. Yes, that Yami. Tell me, how many other Yamis do you know? But, how did it happen? Kyozu finished for him. A story for another time, however, I am not here to talk about myself. I am here to talk about you. Naruto blinked. Me? Yes, you, Kyozu answered as he sat on a stool besides Naruto's bed and crossed his arms. First, let me clarify this. I know you're the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. Naruto froze and stared at the man with downright horror. Kyozu rolled his eyes. You know, if you keep giving me that face with every bit of information I give you, you might as well just keep your face like that. Naruto immediately wiped the look of shock from his face and looked at Kyozu. Is that the reason why you brought me here? Kyozu held up his hand and shook it a little as a sort of type of manner. Naruto then blinked again. Where is here exactly? How long was I out for? You have been out for about a day or so. And as for where you are in my little underground abode in Uzushiogakure, the home of your ancestors on your mother's side. My mother? Naruto shouted and tried to sit up farther up on his bed, but the pain forced him back down. Kyozu was instantly by his side, helping him lay back down. Easy, kid. You're still sore from your fight with the Gaki. What happened to Sasuke anyway? Naruto asked him. Your sensei took him back to Konoha, however, I brought you here. He left me? Naruto asked, feeling hurt and betrayed. No, he tried to stop me but I knocked him away. Why, I shall get to in a moment. Naruto nodded as Kyozu continued. Anyway, back onto the subject of your parents. Your mother was Uzumaki Kushina, the Chichiyo no Habanero, red-hot-blooded habanero. She was a member of the Uzumaki clan, the clan that led the village of Uzushiogakure, where we are right now. Naruto gaped in surprise. My mother's clan had a village? Kyozu nodded with a grin. Yep, the Soul Leaders. They were famous, and some might say infamous, for their skills with the sword and in Fuinjutsu. They are a very powerful clan. In fact, they are cousin clan to the Senju. Furthermore, the Shodai Hokage's wife was an Uzumaki. Really? Yep, and while I am thinking about it, his wife, Uzumaki Mito, was the first Jinchuriki for the Kyuubi, the second was your mother, and you are the third. Naruto blinked in surprise and in shock. He couldn't believe it. His mother and the Shodai Hokage's wife were not only of the same clan, but they were also the Jinchuriki of the Fox before he was. Naruto looked up at him. What happened to my mother? Why is the fox now in me? Kyozu sighed. I wasn't given the full details, but someone attacked you while you were being born. He used the moment of weakness of your mother to free the Kyuubi and spread havoc across Konoha. To keep Konoha safe, your father sacrificed himself to seal the Kyuubi into you. My father sealed the Kyuubi into me? But I thought it was. Naruto trailed off as his face got pale with shock. The Yondaime. The Yondaime is my father. Namikaze Minato, the Yellow Flash, Kyozu confirmed. He couldn't ask another family to sacrifice their child if wasn't willing to do it himself. He also trusted that you'd be able to handle the beast and that you would be taken care of. As you know yourself, however, only the former came to reality. Naruto was in tears by this point and Kyozu put a comforting hand on the boy's head. I know it's a lot to take in, Naruto, Kyozu said in a gentle voice that was very contrast to the essence he gave off, but there's still more. Naruto wiped the tears from his eyes and nodded. Kyozu took a deep breath. I take it you've heard of the Rikudo Sennin, correct? Naruto blinked. You mean that myth about the founder of ninjutsu? It's no myth, boy, Kyozu said seriously. The Rikudo Sennin did indeed exist. He fought the being known as the Jubi and became the first Jinchuriki. Towards the end of his life he split the Jubi into 9 parts, whom you know today as the 9 Biju. Naruto gasped slightly. I am not done yet. The Rikudo Sennin is the ancestor of the Uzumaki clan as well as the ancestor of the Senju and Uchiha clans. Naruto gaped in utter shock. I'm related to the Rikudo Sennin. Wait, I am related to Tsunade Ba-chan and the Teme? Distantly to the latter, but yes. Naruto didn't know whether or not to be disturbed, excited, or both. Naruto slowly laid back down. I think I need time to process this. Not yet, Naruto. I am not done. Naruto looked at him strangely and then sarcastically asked, What are you going to tell me I'm the direct descendant of the Rikudo Sennin next? Well, you are, but that wasn't what I was going to say. Naruto looked at him with his mouth dropped. He was the original Kami no Shinobi's direct descendant, yet that wasn't the important thing Kyozu was going to tell him. Then what was? It's actually the reason why I took you away and brought you here. It's to train you. Naruto gasped and looked at him. You want to train me? But why? Kyozu pointed at Naruto and said the line that would change Naruto's world forever. Simple. You are the Rikudo Sennin reborn. You are his reincarnation. You and the Sennin and one in the same person. Silence. Dead silence filled the room. That is until Naruto shouted out at the top of his lungs, I'm what? Jiraiya was quickly making his way through Hai no Kuni, trying to find whatever trace of his godson that he could when he stopped. Was that Naruto's voice? Jiraiya asked himself. He could have sworn he had heard his godson's distant voice somewhere. Seemed like it came from the north. What am I doing? I've got to continue my search. With that, Jiraiya took off again. Despite the pain, Naruto was in Kaosu's face, shouting at the top of his lungs. What do you mean I am the Rikudo Sennin's reincarnation? Kyozu's face was blank. First, sit down and shut up, kid. Second, I mean exactly that. You're the Rikudo Sennin reborn unto this world. But how is this possible? Look, kid. I am Yami's harbinger, not Yami himself. He didn't tell me that, however. He did tell me to awake the memories of your past life and then train you to match your predecessor. Why would the god of darkness want to help me? I don't know, Kyozu said. I did hear him mumble something along the lines of, damn Kami, but that's pretty much it. Naruto's sweat dropped. He had never seen someone act this casual as he talking about Yami. Hell, few people ever really did talk about those deities now that he thought about it. His train of thought was derailed when Kyozu spoke up. Now, to unlock those memories of yours. I am going to get the Sennin's memories? And his dojutsu as well. His dojutsu? The Rinnegan, the eyes of God. Awesome. I am going to be the world's greatest shinobi. Naruto shot up in true Naruto fashion but collapsed again after his brief speech due to the pain. Kyozu deadpanned, kid, I thought I told you to sit still and be quiet. Sorry, Naruto shrunk under the harbinger's gaze. Now, let us begin. Kyozu said as he put his middle and index finger on Naruto's forehead and slowly shut his eyes to concentrate. 3 months later. Shinra Tensei. Naruto shouted and an invisible force shot Kyozu back quite a ways before he managed to catch readied his preferred weapon. A bastard, meaning one or two-handed, scythe before he shot forward in a zigzag fashion, making him a much harder target to hit. Naruto smirked as his Rinnegan gazed at his sensei. Bansho Tenin. Kyozu suddenly felt himself being pulled toward his student, who was now readying a Rasengan to shove into his face. He, however, took advantage of this and began to swing his scythe down at the boy. Naruto quickly jumped backwards to avoid the swing just as his master flew past him. He rebounded, preparing to use his Rasengan against his dark-eyed sensei. When he thrust his Rasengan at Kyozu, it connected instead with the pull of the scythe. The two were locked in the duel between scythe and Rasengan before Naruto allowed the Rasengan to go critical and release a torrent of energy. Both fighters were forced back, yet both remained standing. They stared at each other intently before they both laughed to themselves. Well, that certainly was fun, Naruto said to his sensei. Indeed, you actually managed to give me a hard time while using so few attacks. That's impressive. Thank you, Kyozu sensei. I am pleased to say that there is little else I can prepare you for. You chose only 4 moves to use against my full arsenal and did a very good job of fending me off. You have master of the 5 basic elements and the Kurama is by your side. You truly are the Sennin reborn. Thanks, Kyozu sensei. Kyozu shook his head. The sensei is no longer need. I work for you now, Rikudo-sama. Kyozu bowed. Naruto blinked in surprise but returned the bow. Naruto owed everything that had happened recently to Kyozu. When the man had unsealed the memories of his past life, it was like he had reached enlightenment. Flashback. Now, let us begin, Kyozu said as he put his middle and index finger on Naruto's forehead and slowly shut his eyes to concentrate. At first nothing happened, but then a shockwave of pain and memories shot through Naruto's skull. It seemed like the speed of life. He saw the sage's childhood. He saw the sage's training. He saw the sage's techniques. He saw the sages fight with the Jubi. He saw the sages' wedding. He saw the sages' sons. He saw the sages' elderly days. He saw the sages' mourning of the loss of his wife. And he saw the sages' last words to the new 9 Biju before the old man had passed on. All these memories and more flashed through Naruto's mind. It felt like thousands upon thousands of shadow clones exploding at once. It was insane. Suddenly his eyes began to burn, but he couldn't move. He could shout out in pain. He could only sit there staring Yami's harbinger on earth. Despite the intense pain, he also felt bliss. It was as if a piece of his being had been returned to him. As if he was being made whole once again. Kyozu then removed his hand from Naruto's forehead. Naruto's head looked down and his hand went to his chance as he tried to catch his breath. "You okay, kid?" Kyozu asked. "Yeah, just give me a moment." After a few moments, Naruto took one deep breath. "Okay, I'm fine now." Naruto looked up and opened his eyes, but immediately had to blink a couple of times. What's with this vision? I see things so much clearer than before. Hey, the faded black stuff around your body, is that your chakra? Kyozu shrugged. Probably. Why is it black? Harbinger of Yami, god of darkness, remember? Oh, yeah, right. There was a silence for a minute before Kyozu spoke. "So, kid." Naruto looked up. "How do you feel?" Naruto thought a minute before he answered. "I don't know. All these memories. It's very overwhelming. There are so many techniques, yet I feel like I already can do them." "Well, technically you can, but your body isn't prepared for them yet. Your mind is, but your body isn't. That's where I come in. I shall train you so that you can use the Rikudo Sennin's techniques without hindering yourself." Naruto fist pumped in the air. "Awesome. By the way, what do my dojutsu look like?" Kyozu smiled. "See for yourself." Kyozu pulled out a mirror from Kami knows where and showed it to Naruto. Naruto blinked a couple of times before rubbing his eyes. He leaned forward to get a closer look. No longer were his eyes a charming blue. Now they were a purplish hue with 6 rings extending from the pupil of his eye. Naruto gaped. "Wow, it looks awesome." "Dat bayo." Kyozu laughed at the boys' antics. Their laugh was interrupted by the sound of Naruto's stomach growling. Naruto looked down at his stomach and Kyozu looked at Naruto. Naruto scratched the back of his head as he grinned sheepishly. Got anything to eat?" "Yes. Got any ramen?" Kyozu shrugged. "I'll see what we have." "So, I think you are ready for some real shinobi training," Kyozu stated. "And unfortunately that's not my forte. So I've gathered the 6 paths you shall use. Each one is an S-class shinobi so they can help you with your elemental and shinobi training." Naruto was surprised but nodded. He knew very well that Kaosu's training was only to prepare his body for the techniques utilized by the Rikudo Sennin through his memories. In all reality he hadn't received any shinobi training in 3 months as Kyozu wasn't in fact a shinobi other than he could tree walk and water walk. Though he was very curious who his 6 paths were going to be. He mentioned his desire to finally utilize the 6 paths and Kyozu took him to where 6 coffins were in Uzushiogakure. Naruto looked at Kyozu with a raised eyebrow. The older man just shrugged. "It's a surprise." Naruto sighed and sent his chakra into the 6 bodies hidden from him. When the bodies gained life and the coffin doors fell open, Naruto gasped. Before him were Shodai, Nidame, Sandame, and Yondaime Hokages including 2 red-haired women he didn't immediately recognize. What surprised him even more was how they all collapsed gasping for breath. "What the heck just happened?" the Shodai Hokage asked. He was the first to stand up. "And why do I have 7 fields of vision?" "I don't know," answered his brother. "But perhaps these 2 know." The 6 formerly dead cage-level shinobi blinked as they saw who was in front of him. 2 of them gasped. They walked towards the 2 and bent down to Naruto's level. "Naruto." They struggled to say. Naruto just smiled. "Hello Otou-san, Okawa-san." Tears built up in the 3 of their eyes. Naruto, Minato and Kushina jolt forward and hugged their son as tight as they could. Naruto did the same to his parents. The other 4 paths were starting to get an idea of what was going on but were still very lost. "Naruto," Minato asked, "how are we here? Where are we? And what the hell happened to your eyes?" "Don't you mean our eyes, Otou-san?" Naruto asked smirking. They all blinked and looked at each other. They quickly realized they all had the same eyes as well as metal piercings sticking out of their skin across their bodies. I'm pretty sure I speak for everyone here when I ask what exactly is going on here. Mito spoke and everyone nodded. Naruto pointed at his one-time sensei, asked him. They all looked at the cloak man before he smiled. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Mahotsukai Kaozu. I am the mortal harbinger of Yami, the god of darkness. All six gasped slightly in shock. Hiruzen was the first one to recover and speak. You're the harbinger of Yami? Kaozu nodded. Yes, I am. They all looked at each other. Hashirama decided to speak. So what are we doing here? Well, you see, let me explain. About 1 hour later. Okay, let me see if I've got this, Minato said. All 6 ex-Konoha shinobi were sitting in a semi-circle around Kaozu and Naruto. We have been chosen to be the 6 paths for the reincarnation of the Rikudo Sennin, who is my son, and we are to train him in more advanced shinobi ways and in the elemental arts to help him grow to be as strong as his predecessor. And my son was abused by the village, ignoring my husband's finally request to keep my baby boy safe. Kushina continued, glaring at Hiruzen, who was sweating profusely. The old say was indeed true. Hell hath no fury like that of a woman scorned. It's not the old man's fault, Kushina, Kaozu stated, gaining the attention of the others. I have visited Konoha on many occasions since I picked up Naruto as a student. Ever since the Kyuubi attack, the civilian council has bid for more and more power. To this day they've gained enough to equal the Shinobi Council and the Hokage herself. Most of them just groaned and shook their heads. Hashirama sighed. It appears as if Konoha is slowly losing its will of fire. And hopefully we can stop that and return the will of fire to the village, Naruto said. The others nodded. Now on to other business, Tobirama spoke. You mentioned us each have different abilities due to our separate paths. What are they? Naruto smirked and nodded his head. Well, Otou-san, you're the diva path. You have control over gravity. Minato nodded. Okawa-san, you're the animal path. You have the ability to summon any animal, no contracts required. Sweet, she said, smirking. Mito-san, you're the Asura path. You have the ability to summon and use any weapon you can imagine. Mito smirked and nodded. Tobirama-san, you're the human path. You have the ability to read people's mind and tear their souls from their bodies. I see, the former Hokage said as he thought this over. Hashirama-san, you're the Preta path. You have the ability to absorb any and all chakra attacks. So, ninjutsu is useless against me? Hashirama asked, amused. Naruto nodded and the Shodai grinned. That's useful. And Jiji-san, you're the Naraka path. You have the ability to summon the King of Hell? Hiruzen cocked his eyebrow. The King of Hell? Yes, with the King of Hell you are allowed to interrogate people. You can tell if they are telling the truth or lying and have their souls devoured by him if they lie. You also have the ability to revive the other paths should they ever be defeated for whatever reason. So the Kami no Shinobi is the path we need to keep alive at all times, huh? Minato asked, smirking. That shouldn't be too hard. They all laughed. Naruto turned to his ex-sensei and asked, Hey Kaozu-sensei. Kaozu-san, Naruto, Kaozu sighed. I'm not your sensei anymore. Fine, Kaozu-san, but is it okay if I go to practice my stealth on a bit of a mission before I begin my training? The others look at him strangely. What do you have in mind, Rikudo-sama? Kaozu asked, saying the Naruto's title sort of playfully. Naruto ignored his sensei's jibes, smirked and said, I just want to see how my former home is doing. Konohagakure. Once the greatest of the 5 great shinobi villages, Konoha had fallen on to incredibly hard times. Since Naruto's kidnapping, things had gone into an economic depression. After the retrieval mission, word had spread quickly of Naruto's disappearance. But while most of the shinobi did see the seriousness of Naruto's kidnapping and had even started seeing him as Naruto and not the demon he held, the civilians were a completely different matter. They were happy he was gone. That the demon could no longer attempt hurt them in any way. They threw parties and the like and celebrated that the demon brat was now gone. Many of the shinobi were in disgust. Not only was Naruto not the demon, he held the demon back on a daily basis. Even more so, even after the villagers made his childhood a living hell, Naruto still found it in himself to save their lives during the Oto and Suna invasion and to fight the Uchiha brat to get him back into the village. And this was how they repaid him. The Konoha 11, or those who respected Naruto among the Konoha 11, were easily the most brutal against the villagers who celebrated Naruto's disappearance. Even Shikamaru would put in the effort to stop the civilians. Unfortunately for Konoha, the celebrations of their young hero's disappearance didn't go unnoticed by its allies. Suna, Spring, Wave, and T-Nations, after hearing what Konoha populace did to the one person who made them their allies, cut off trade with Konoha and unanimously agreed to trade with each other for resources. The blow crippled Konoha. The Godem Hokage, Senju Tsunade, was busy with the Great Cage paperwork curse. Everyone in Konoha had been working overtime day in and day out for the past 3 months to make up for budget cuts made by their daimyo. Despite this, Tsunade still always smirked at the thought of their feudal lord's visit. Simply remembering the fired daimyo tear the civilian council a new one always made her grin. Flashback. About 2 months earlier. The civilians were very nervous and were uncontrollably shifting under the gaze of the fired daimyo, who was glaring at them with pure hate. The gaze of the Hokage and the Shinobi Council was comforting in comparison, and they weren't exactly smiling. Well, the Hokage was, but it was more like a, haha, you are fucked, grin. So, let me just tell you what your actions have caused, the daimyo said in a very calm but very unnerving voice. Suna, Spring, Wave, and T have all ended trade with us. The council was in instant uproar. What? Why would they do that? We have treaties. They can't do this. We should show them why we are the greatest shinobi village. Silence. The daimyo shouted out furiously. The entire civilian council shut up instantly. The shinobi council was shaking their heads. Their civilian counterparts were only making things worse. The daimyo pointed at the civilian side and shouted, "This is all your fault." The council shrunk in fear of their lord. One council member managed to squeak out, "Our fault? Yes, your damn fault." The daimyo roared. The council seemed like an infant compared to the biju that was their feudal lord. Tsunade smirked. They were squirming and she was enjoying every minute of it. Serves you right, bastards, she thought. Because of you and the civilians you represent, these nations have cut off all trade with US. Daimyo shouted, still downright furious. My lord, Danzo spoke up. What is it? What is it that we've done to gain such hate from our allies? Danzo said calmly. I don't recall doing anything against them. It's not what you fools did to them. Tsunade spoke up, glaring at them. It's what you did to the one person who convinced them to ally with us. And who is this person we have disrespected so? One Uzumaki Naruto, whom you've been celebrating the kidnapping of for the past couple weeks. There was a stunned silence from the civilian council. They were gaping with eyes wide. Tsunade began to count down in her mind, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, what? They turned us away because we celebrated the removal of the demon? This is outrageous. That demon doesn't deserve anything for what we've suffered. Silence. The daimyo's voice rumbled with ungodly fury. From the size of an infant the council shrunk to the size of ants. They were cowering with fear. Their feudal lord seemed angry enough to have them all executed in the most ungodly, painful way possible. That demon is the only reason we are allies with the Wave, Spring, and T. That demon was the one who defeated the One-Tails Jinchuriki and convinced him to leave the battle. That demon is the only thing keeping the Kyuubi no Kitsune at bay, and yet you kami damned civilians kept abusing him? What if one of those time of abuse the demon escaped? No one would have been able to stop it. You would have brought upon yourselves your own destruction. The shinobi in the room didn't know whether the civilians were silent because of their lord's speech, because they were ashamed, or because they were terrified. But most of them really didn't care. I am cutting Konoha's budget, the daimyo proclaimed. This is to make up for the loss of income we have had. Also, because the civilians are the cause of all this, they shall have their taxes tripled to help pay for things Konoha needs to survive. My lord, a councilman exclaimed, shocked. You can't be serious. Did I stutter? The daimyo rhetorically asked, and with a very cold gaze at the man who dared question him. The daimyo took a deep breath and stated, now, let's continue with our next subject, the Uchiha traitor. The civilian council paled and many cried on the inside. Most felt their wallets get significantly lighter. But all of them knew that this day was going to get a hell of a lot worse for them all. Serves you all right, you bastards, Tsunade thought, snickering to herself. The civilians were struggling to make ends meet due to the taxes imposed on them by the daimyo. It seemed karma was back with a vengeance. though from Tsunade's perspective it still had a long way to go before it was done. As for what happened to the Uchiha, it pretty much enraged and horrified the council, not that she cared. The Uchiha had his chakra and Sharingan sealed for 6 months, and for that same amount of time he was under house arrest. His only visitors were those he had gotten permission from the Hokage herself. Naturally, he received very few. She sighed to herself. Despite the civilians' position under the great hatred of their daimyo, they still somehow managed to be able to pull the strings in Konoha. She suspected the elders Danzo, Kaharu, and Homura had something to do with it, but she didn't have any physical evidence. And she couldn't do anything without evidence. She groaned as she was about to get back to her paperwork, but she thanked Kami as a knock came from the door. "Yes?" she asked, and Shizune entered. "What is it, Shizune?" "We've just received a message from Jiraiya-sama." "And what is it?" Tsunade asked, hiding her anxiousness. "One of Jiraiya-sama's spies has report seeing a man that matches the description Kakashi gave us buying supplies in Wave Country." Tsunade was instantly on her feet. "What? Where'd he go after that?" "Apparently, he stayed at an inn in the settlement he was at but was gone by morning with only a thank you note and some extra money for the room." Tsunade sat back down and rubbed her chin in thought. "Anbu." They appeared instantly beside Shizune. "Yes, Hokage-sama? Tell Shikaku, Kakashi, and Sume that I want them here now. I want their opinions on this." "Hi, Hokage-sama," they replied before vanishing. "Naruto, we're finally on your trail," Tsunade whispered to herself, hoping to Kami herself that somehow it wasn't too late. Hyuga Hinata was slowly making her way through Konoha. She still thought about Naruto. She hoped to Kami he was alright. She and her comrades had changed over the last couple of months. The Konoha 12 was now the Konoha 10, at least until Sasuke was allowed back into the shinobi force, which she and many of her comrades were not going to be happy about. The members of Konoha 12, or as it once had been, who respected Naruto's sacrifices and what he put up with, had all trained very hard to be able to surpass their senseis. They knew that if the kidnapper could oust Kakashi as easily they did, they knew they'd have to be significantly stronger to beat him. Even Shikamaru had put in some effort to training, though he still complained a lot. He was getting that much closer to beating his father in shogi, and his old man was very impressed. He had even done some negotiations with Suna and had managed to convince the case cage to still allow Konoha shinobi to enter Suna. Shikamaru had commented that, "That's as good as it's going to get for now." Hinata herself had changed the most over the past 3 months. She was more determined than all her comrades in the Konoha 10 to get Naruto back if there was any hope for it being possible. She trained very hard, even asking Lee and Neji for some help. Her confidence had soared. Determination to live up to Naruto's level of confidence swelled in her eyes. She even visited Ichiraku Ramen rather often and had began good friends with the 2 cooks who had been so nice to Naruto in the past. She sighed as she continued on through the village towards the training grounds. She could never stop think about him missing Crush, and she never wanted to. She whispered quietly to herself, "Naruto, please be alright." Outside the gate, 2 figures approached. One was a young man with long black hair and with bandages over his eyes. He had a cane he used as a walking stick. The other was a young boy wearing shades and a bandana that covered his hair. He also had a coat covering the bottom half of his face. When they reached the gates, they were stopped by the gate guards. "What is your business in Konoha?" "Just passing through," the man with bandages over his eyes. He looked at the guard only after he had spoken. "We'll be gone by tomorrow." The guard nodded, but the other looked at him strangely. "Why are your eyes bandaged?" "My Oji-san was born without eyes," the boy said, speaking. "We can't afford the artificial ones." "And you, boy, what's your excuses?" "Suffered really bad burns as a kid. Horribly scared my body." The one guard looked ready to retort, but his comrade stopped him. "Leave them alone, Katetsu, they're fine." The guard looked at them. "Forgive my partner for asking so many questions. You must write your names down and then we can let you through." The 2 nodded and the young man and the boy wrote their names down. Nisamono Toshiro and Nisamono Keiji respectively. The 2 guards let them by and the duo thanked them. When they had left, Katetsu turned to his best friend. "Didn't they look the least bit suspicious to you?" "They did. That's why when the Sandame's grandson and his team arrived to pick the paper up, I'll tell him to inform the Hokage. There wasn't any shinobi I could inform otherwise." Kotetsu nodded at the answer and grumbled as they got back to working on guarding the gate. After they had passed the guards, the boy looked at the man. Told you we didn't need to resort to a henge or to your dark stealth. Yeah, I know. I owe you 100 yen now, Kaozu grumbled as he used his other senses to continue to walk. But don't you think that they are suspicious of us now? Maybe, but we'll be gone before they have the chance to investigate us. Fine, you go find your friends. I have date with the Hokage to keep. Isn't bad enough that Eros Sennin wants to date, Ba-chan? Naruto asked, looking at him. Kaozu deadpanned. It's an expression, kid. Yeah, a bad one. With that, Naruto walked down a different street. Kaozu sighed and shook his head. Damn kid. With that, Kaozu continued down the path towards the Hokage Tower. Naruto, still in disguise, walked down the crowded streets of Konoha. He was looking around and so far not much had changed. He thought about going to Ichiraku but decided that wouldn't be a good idea because that could lead to people discovering who he was and, as much as he wanted to, couldn't do that just yet. He still had a lot of training to do before then. Just as he finished his musings, he came upon some of his old friends. Neji, Kiba, Choji, and Shikamaru. They were sitting down at a table outside a small restaurant. Naruto decided to listen in. He got as close as he could as casually as he could and focused his hearing towards the conversation. So Jiraiya really got a lead on the guy who kidnapped Naruto? Choji asked. Yeah, Shikamaru answered. Kakashi-sensei, my father, and Kiba's mother were all called to the Hokage's office. Oh, smooth one, Kaozu, Naruto thought, groaning inwardly. Way to keep a low profile. Have you told Hinata yet? Neji asked. Shikamaru shook his head. Haven't seen her today. Naruto's eyes narrowed. Why would she care about this kind of information? She was so shy, especially around me. Where do you think she is anyway? Choji asked. Probably training, I would think, Kiba answered. She wants to be ready when it's time to face the guy who kidnapped Naruto. Kidnapper, huh? Naruto smirked to himself. I'll have to use that as a nickname for Kaozu now. She truly does love him, doesn't she? Choji asked rhetorically. Naruto's eyes widened at that and he intently listened in for the answer. Yes, she loves that Dobi so much she's willing to train to the extent that Guy-sensei trains us to get him back, Neji answered. It's too bad she could never bring herself to confess to that oblivious baka without fainting. Yeah, Kiba smiled sadly. Naruto was stunned. Hinata. She loved me. No, she still loves me. Despite what her family has told her, she still loves me. Naruto walked down an alley and dropped his disguise. He then raced off to find the Hyuga heiress, keeping himself well hidden from all eyes as he did so. Hinata, I'm so sorry I was such a baka, Naruto thought to himself. I will make it up now. I promise. Naruto looked ahead as he approached the training grounds, and Namikaze Uzumaki, Naruto never breaks a promise. At the training grounds, Hinata was about to begin with stamina training when she heard someone land behind her. She turned around and activated her Byakugan. Who's there? She could see the intruder's chakra. It seemed so familiar but was heavily suppressed, which surprised her. When she got no answer, she shouted out, I know you're there, there's no use in hiding. The figure stepped out of the shadows and she gasped. There before her was Naruto. He was no longer in his kill me now jumpsuit, but was now in orange and white training gear with a white haori over it. But Naruto's eyes were the biggest different. They were no longer blue but were now violet with 6 rings rippling out of the center. She couldn't move. She was just too surprised by this. However, she did manage to stutter out, Naruto? He smiled warmly at her. Hello, Hinata-chan. Hinata was in shock. Her longtime crush, no, love, was standing right before her. Hinata instantly went back to her stuttering at the sight of him. Naruto. How is it possible? Kakashi-sensei said you were kidnapped. Naruto put hand to chin and spoke out loud of his playful musings. Well, I wouldn't call it kidnapping really. Kaozu-sensei really only took me so that I could live out my true calling. What? Hinata asked confused. You weren't kidnapped? Kaozu-sensei? True calling? Naruto, what are you talking about? Naruto grinned. First Hinata, lose the stutter. You sounded cuter without it. Hinata was cherry red at that statement. Did he just call me cute? I will try, Naruto. Call me, Naruto-kun, Hinata-chan. Chan? Did he just call me Chan? Wait, did he just ask me to call him kun? Hinata nodded and took a deep breath and said, "How is the end, Naruto-kun?" Naruto shook his head smiling, "It's good enough for now." Naruto smiled at her and sat down on the grass. He patted the ground next to her and she sat down next to him. "Now answering your questions. No, I wasn't kidnapped per se, though now I'm going to be using that to tease Kyozu-sensei." Naruto snickered to himself. Hinata blinked. "Who's Kyozu-sensei?" "Hey, Hinata-chan, your stutter's gone." Naruto laughed and Hinata's face melted into a darker red, if that was at all possible. "But to answer your question, Kyozu-sensei is the one who took me." "He was the one who took you?" Hinata asked. "Why? To help me become what I was meant to be." Hinata looked at him both strangely and with a hint of worry. "What do you mean, Naruto-kun?" Naruto took a deep breath. "You know the old story of the Rikudo Sennin?" Hinata nodded. "You mean the old myth of the founder of ninjutsu?" "It's no myth, Hinata." Hinata's eyes widened in surprise. "What? There's more, Hinata," Naruto said, looking at her seriously. "You have noticed the change in my eyes?" "Yes," Hinata nodded. "What happened? What are they?" "These are the dojutsu used by the Rikudo Sennin," Naruto explained. "The Rinnegan." "What?" Hinata said, surprised. Naruto's hand quickly went over her mouth and he whispered, "Shush, Hinata. I don't want anyone to know I'm here. Please quiet down." Hinata nodded but asked, "Naruto, how do you have the eyes of the Rikudo Sennin?" Naruto took another deep breath before speaking, "Because Hinata, I am the Rikudo Sennin reborn. The Rikudo Sennin and I are one and the same person." Kyozu had managed to get out of his disguise and was using his shadow stealth technique to glide across the floor of the Hokage Tower as a mere faded shadow. He didn't move rapidly as to not draw attention, but he slowly made it into the Hokage's office. He hid next to the door. He took special note of where everyone in the room was: the Hokage herself, her assistant, the 3 Jonin present, and the Anbu hidden within the office itself. "I'm in luck," he thought. "They're just starting the meeting. I'm surprised you showed up on time, Hitaki-san," Tsunade commented, slightly amused. "You mentioned it had to do with Naruto, so I came as quickly as I could," the copy nin answered. Kyozu blinked. What? "So, what is it you need from us, Hokage-sama?" Inuzuka Sume asked. "I need your opinions on something," the Godem answered. "Something very important." "Troublesome," Shikaku grunted, earning a glare from the 3 women in the room. Ignoring the comment, Kakashi spoke up. "And what would that be, Hokage-sama?" "Recently, one of Jiraiya's spies spotted the man Kakashi saw taking Naruto. He instantly got everyone's attention. It especially got Kaosu's attention, who was wide-eyed at the very prospect of being discovered." "What? Where is he?" Kakashi asked desperately. In his mind, he was overjoyed that he finally had a chance to redeem himself. "Naruto, I hope it's not too late. I need to apologize for what I've done. For neglecting you, for not being able to save you, and for not protecting you when your teammates went too far. When you return, I will treat you as I should have as a sensei. Not to mention preventing Sasuke and Sakura from attacking you after beating the Uchiha brat down." It was true, neither Sasuke or Sakura had really changed much since Naruto's kidnapping. Sasuke was enraged that he didn't get away and of the treatment he was getting as the last Uchiha, namely being sealed and placed under house arrest. He didn't care that Naruto had been taken and the rest of the Konoha 11, as he refused to call it Konoha 10 since he still considered himself the best of them, refused to do anything involving the Uchiha heir. All of them except for Sakura, that is. Sakura hadn't changed her view on Naruto. She was willing to let him stay kidnapped and let Kami knows whatever was happening to him continue as long as she had the damn Uchiha brat by her side. Consequently, Kakashi, disgusted by the fact that they had completely let their teammate to rot, refused to train them any longer and, with Tsunade's permission, was allowed to dissolve Team 7. Needless to say, the Civilian Council, the Harunos, and the Uchiha were not very happy. Kakashi didn't care and said that he wasn't going to train them and to find somebody else. They did just that. They had found a Jonin loyal to the civilian side to train Sakura and Sasuke, once he was out from under house arrest. Kakashi nowadays was either helping the other teams train from time to time, substituting for their senseis, or tagging along on their missions as an extra set of hands. How this happened was when most of the Konoha 10, as he continually called it to irritate the council, proclaimed their desire to grow stronger to be able to help defeat the man who kidnapped Naruto. He knew that he now needed to make sure they were ready. The guy had given him a guy-like strike without touching him and in the same instant managed to evade him so well it was as if he never existed. They would need all the strength they could get. The other senseis and their teams welcomed Kakashi's training with open arms, even though he was still always about an hour or two late. He was seen gathering supplies in a small settlement in the wave. He vanished before day broke however, Tsunade answered, letting the information sink in. Kaozu on the other hand was inwardly groaning, Kami damn it. I hate spies when they're used on me. When Naruto hears this he's never going to let me live it down. Ever. So, Kakashi's face dropped in disappointment. You still don't know where he is. Not exactly, Tsunade confirmed. However, 2 of you are our best trackers and 1 of you is our best strategist. I want you to put your heads together, see if you can come up with a general area he could be based on the information we know about him. The 3 Jonin were silent for a minute as they thought. Kakashi was the first person to speak. Well, based on my encounter with him, I have to say he is nay untraceable if he doesn't want to be found. So as finding him probably means he's leading us somewhere. No, Kaozu mentally cried anime tears. I just fucked up. So you're implying he might based in the wave? Shikaku asked. Or it could be a trap he's setting up, Sume pointed out. Kakashi and Shikaku, med, at the analysis. That was a legit point. The man had proved to have been a match for Kakashi or even more than a match for the copy Nen due to how unimpressed he was when they first met. Shikaku then brought something else up. What exactly did he buy anyway? A lot apparently, Shizune answered. It's a long list. So, he's either been doing a lot of high-ranked missions and bounty for one of the nations, Tsunade deduced. Or he's being funded by someone. Kaozu smiled mentally. Yami pays his harbingers well. Hehe. Would you mind reading the list? Shikaku asked. The others looked at him curiously, wondering why that would matter but decided just to go along with it. Shizune pulls out the list and begin reading it. 100 slabs of stone from the local quarry, 100 blocks of iron from the local forge, 50 planks of wood from the local lumber mill. Well paid, indeed, Kaozu inwardly snicked. It's pretty much as the same thing the rest of the way down. It's really just materials for building and crafting until we reach food which includes but is not limited to chicken, beef, breads, and. Shizune's eyes widened at the last one, which gets Tsunade's and the other Jonin's attention. And what Shizune-san? Shikaku asked. And ramen. While some saw this as a token of interest, Shikaku himself shrugged it off, could be he just likes variety. Shizune deadpanned, yes, Shikaku-san, because we all know that 50 packets of instant ramen goes well with seasoned chicken and rice. The others blinked in surprise at this revelation. Kaozu sighed inwardly, knew that kids' ramen addiction would have consequences, but no, taking away his ramen puts him into a berserk fit of rage. Hopefully his parents can keep him in line now. So either this man has a ramen addiction that can match Naruto. Kakashi began, no way in hell. Kaozu's sweat dropped. Or Naruto is still alive and is being taken care of. And this is my cue, Kaozu thought as the shadow quickly formed himself leaning on the wall next to the door. I can vouch for that. The inhabitants of the room instantly jolted to face him. Kakashi recognized him immediately and got ready to fight. You were the one who kidnapped Naruto. Upon hearing this, the other inhabitants joined Kakashi in a fighting stance. Even the Anbu appeared from their various hiding spots with weapons ready. To their surprise the man looked up at the ceiling and put his hands behind his head. What surprised them more was the nonchalant musing he spoke to seemingly no one. I wouldn't exactly call it a kidnapping. I like to call it necessary intervention. I don't care what you call it, Tsunade said in a very low and dangerous tone. You took a shinobi of Konoha away. You are going to spend some time in the interrogation and torture department until you tell us where he is. Oh please, Kaozu scoffed. 1. Your interrogation and torture department doesn't scare me. Trust me, my great-grandmother is scarier. Kaozu involuntarily shivered at the last part. 2. I evaded Mr. Cyclops here in a split second. What makes you think the same won't happen here? 3rd. Naruto is fine. In fact, the boy's better than fine. He's improving by leaps and bounds since I picked him up. 4. Why should I bring him back if the village doesn't want him? You lie. Kakashi shouted. The boy is well respected by Konoha. He belongs here. Kaosu's eyes narrowed. Yes, because your populace made that so clear after they had learned he was gone. That struck a nerve in all of them. They felt guilty and rightfully so. What he spoke was true. Kaozu wasn't done, however. Don't think Naruto hasn't heard about what they did. All the parties and such. He knows full well what has gone on here. However, he is also aware of how many of the shinobi did stand up for him, and believe me when I say he does appreciate that. The Jonin didn't know whether or not to be ashamed or relieved. Tsunade, Shizune, and Kakashi were fighting back tears at the man's words. Somehow, they knew what he was saying was true. Naruto is doing very well, however, due to recent events he can't reveal himself to you just yet. Believe me, he wants to, but he knows now is not the time. There was a pause before Kakashi asked, when can we see him again? Kaozu thought a moment before he said, for those who wish to see him, go to the ruins of Uzushio exactly 2 years from today. Their eyes widened. They were in Uzushio this whole time? How did they manage that? The place was crawling with traps and the like. And Tsunade-sama. Tsunade snapped out of her thoughts when she heard her name and looked at the man. Naruto wanted me to pass this message on to you, and I am saying this verbatim. I'm okay, Ba-chan. Don't worry about me. We'll see each other again soon. And please know that even though I didn't know you long, I sort of saw a mother-like figure in you. Tsunade sat back into her chair. She couldn't fight back the tears any longer. Those words held so much meaning. She knew the man was telling the truth. Thank you, Mr. She paused, realizing she had never gotten his name. She looked at him and he smiled. Right. My name is Kaozu. Mahotsukai Kaozu. I am the harbinger of Yami, the god of darkness. With that, Kaozu vanished, leaving the inhabitants of the room stunned one last time before leaving. Tsunade was the first to recover and cleared her throat to get everyone's attention. This is to be an S-class secret that never leaves this room. If Naruto wants to remain hidden for now, so be it. Also, Shizune, I want a message sent out to Jiraiya. Tell him I want him back here now. He's currently in the town Kaozu was last spotted at. The others nodded. Tsunade took a deep breath. Now could you all leave? I need a minute alone. They all complied. After they had all left, Tsunade began to cry. She only thought one thing, Naruto. Hinata was looking at Naruto with complete and utter shock. She had just been told that her longtime love was the Rikudo Sennin's reincarnation, NN Naruto-kun. Why you're the Rikudo S Sennin? Stuttering, Hinata-chan, Naruto said, reminding her pleasantly. But yes, I am the Rikudo Sennin. Or his reincarnation at least. I have recently received all the memories of my past life and know all his techniques. I have spent the last 3 months getting my body prepared to be able to handle his my techniques. Man, this whole reincarnation thing is confusing. Hinata was gaping. She couldn't believe it, yet the proof was right there in front of her. She finally managed to find her voice after a minute or two. Have you told the others yet? Naruto smiled sadly at her. No. In fact, I wasn't even supposed to reveal myself as of yet. Hinata's eyes widened again. What? Why? Because I need to stay hidden to train. I have to be ready to fully take up the mantle of the Rikudo Sennin before I reveal myself as his reincarnation to the world. Don't get me wrong. The last 3 months have made me a lot stronger, with the Sennin's memories and techniques and all. But I haven't had any real shinobi training in 3 months, and I need to train in that area for a long time before I'm at the level worthy of the Sennin. I understand, Naruto-kun, Hinata said. She then did probably the boldest move of her life. She leaned up against him and held his arm close to her body. Naruto blinked in surprise, but he relaxed a few short seconds afterward. They sat there a while before Hinata decided to speak. Naruto-kun, Hinata whispered. I know what's sealed inside you. Hinata felt Naruto's body tense at this information, but before he could say anything she got up and stared right at his eyes. Her face was but inches from his. The entire Konoha had 12 knows, or what's left of it. And we don't care, Naruto. In fact, we respect you so much more for what you've been through. You protected us every single day and had the perseverance to stick it through despite what those ungrateful villagers had done. I admire you, Naruto-kun. More than you will ever know. Naruto was silent for a while. He was stunned. They know about the fox and they don't hate me? I can't believe I doubted them. Then Naruto remembered exactly why he came to find her in the first place. You admire me, Hinata-chan. Don't you mean you love me? Hinata froze. Naruto noted that her face went a darker shade of red than his Okawa-san's hair. Hinata put her 2 index fingers together and managed to squeak out, how did you find out? Naruto smiled. I overheard Neji, Shikamaru, Kiba, and Choji talking about it when I was in disguise earlier and I listened in on their conversation. It's the only reason I'm talking with you right now. Hinata and Naruto were silent for a moment before Naruto looked at Hinata apologetically. I'm sorry for being so dense and not noticing it. I hope you can forgive me and that somehow I can make it up to you. Hinata managed to muster her courage up for a reply. Oh, of course I forgive you, and Naruto-kun. I could never hate you. And IUD don't have to make it you up to me. Naruto thought a moment then smirked. I want to though, and I think I know how to start making it up to you, Hinata-chan. With that, Naruto quickly leaned forward and planted a long, loving kiss on Hinata's lips. If her face could have gone a darker shade of red, it probably would have. Hinata was screaming in her mind even as it melted away from the bliss of finally kissing Naruto. Oh Kami, he's kissing me. Naruto-kun is kissing me. Naruto shortly broke the kiss and smiled at her. He then laughed a bit at her expression before he actually started getting worried her face was frozen like that. Hinata-chan. Hello? Naruto snapped his fingers in front of her face a couple of times before she finally snapped out of her blank stare. It took a minute to process what had happened, but after she had fully processed it again she looked straight into Naruto's Rinnegan eyes, Naruto-kun. Naruto nodded with a genuine smile and before he knew it Hinata was latching onto him in a tight hug. Naruto was so surprised by the sudden movement that he fell backwards. By the time he had registered what had happened, Hinata was already hugging him tightly while laying on top of him. She buried her face into the crook of his neck and started to sob softly. Naruto was confused. Hinata-chan? Why are you crying? Did I do something wrong? Hinata managed to look up at him, tears streaming down her face. No, Naruto-kun. I am not crying because I'm sad. I'm crying because I am just so happy. She reburied her face into his next and continued to sob softly. Naruto blinked, not quite understanding, but in the end he just mentally shook it off and returned the embrace. She responded by burying her face deeper. Kaozu was finally in the general area Naruto was in, was jumping through the trees toward where he could feel his life force, which was an ability he had picked up from his own sensei before he took his place as the harbinger of Yami. When he finally reached the training ground, the first thing he noticed was that he was with someone. Damn kid. I told him just to eavesdrop, not to reveal himself. Doesn't this damn kid liste? His thought process instantly stopped when he saw that Naruto was with a girl who he was embracing and also took note that the girl was crying into the crook of the boy's neck. Kaozu paused and blinked a few times before smiled. I think I'll let this one slide. He then jumped off, making sure no one else approached the, dare you say it, adorable scene. It was a while later that Hinata finally managed to stop her sobbing. Naruto helped her sit up. They were silent for a bit before Naruto spoke. Hinata-chan. I have to leave now. Promise me you won't tell anyone you saw me. Hinata nodded. I promise, Naruto-kun. Hinata then topped her earlier bold action by leaning forward and giving Naruto a quick kiss on the cheek. And Naruto-kun, please remember that I will always love you. Naruto smiled as he wiped a tear from his eye. Thank you, Hinata-chan. That means a lot to me. Naruto stood up and then he helped Hinata up. He then spoke to Hinata one last time. Now don't stop training, you hear? I expect you to be a Jonin next time we meet. Hinata nodded determinedly. Of course, Naruto-kun. Oh, and before I forget. Here's something I have been holding on to for a while. Naruto pulled out a scroll and handed it to Hinata. Since I can recreate it, it's no problem that you have it. I knew I had to give you this once I found out how dense I was not to notice your feelings for me. Hinata blinked. What is it, Naruto-kun? Naruto winked at her. You'll just have to read to find out. Oh, and don't let anyone know about it. Alright? Hinata nodded and smiled. Naruto winked again and bid farewell, vanishing in a shunshin of swirling leaves. After Naruto had left, Hinata took the scroll and opened it. Her eyes widened in shock at what she saw. It wasn't long that Naruto was joined by his ex-sensei. Naruto grinned. There you are, UK Han sensei. Heard you got noticed in the wave during your last supply run. Kaozu deadpanned, shut it, lover boy. I have no need for your complaints. Though I do say you picked a nice first girlfriend, kid. Naruto blushed red with embarrassment. You saw that? Kaozu snickered, oh yes, definitely. And let's not forget you share your eyesight with you paths as well. Just wait until we get home. Naruto's face paled and his eyes widened with horror. Oh man. I should have blocked off my vision to them before all that. Crap, now they're never going to stop teasing me. Did you forget about me, Kit? A voice grumbled from inside Naruto's mindscape. Oh great, not you too, Furball. Oh yes, me too. Rikudo-sama, the Kyuubi snickered. Naruto groaned. Sometimes he wished he hadn't opened up his connect to Kyuubi further, though he had to admit the fox's face during that meeting was priceless. Flashback. About 2.5 months ago. Now, Naruto, we must deal with the fox in your gut, Kaozu told his temporary student. Naruto listened on intently. The Rikudo Sennin was technically Kyuubi's and the other Biju's father. So this revelation shall be very interesting. Unfortunately, you must go in alone. Naruto nodded, and with a quick, good luck, from his sensei, Naruto found himself in the dank place that was his mindscape. He walked up to the cage that held the fearsome force of nature and spoke, Hey Kurama. Wake up, Gaki. You have some nerve trying to. The menacing fox paused as he fully registered what his jailer had just said. What did you just call me? Kurama. It's the name I gave you, isn't it? Naruto spoke in a matter-of-fact manner. His eyes were closed as he smirked. The name you gave me? Kurama shouted. My name was given to me by the Rikudo Sennin, the founder of ninjutsu. I know. I'm the Sennin's reincarnation. Of course he existed, Yuba. Kurama froze yet again and looked at the boy in disbelief as he processed what he just. What did you just say? You heard me, Kurama, Naruto said as he opened his eyes, revealing the Rinnegan. I am the reincarnation of your creator. Your father, the Rikudo Sennin. For the first time in his existence, Kurama, the Kyuubi no Kitsune, greatest of all the Biju, fainted in shock. The only sound heard after that was the young Sennin breaking down laughing. Kurama's groan echoed from inside Naruto's mindscape. You're never going to let me live that down, are you? Never. Damn you, Gaki. Now, lover boy, Kaozu said, turning to leave. Let's get home to begin your training. Naruto inwardly groaned. They were never going to leave him alone about his and Hinata's relationship ever again. I guess we both have something to tease the other about, Naruto thought before both he and Kaozu took off back to Uzushiogakure. Jiraiya had returned the night before. It had been about a week since Kaosu's appearance in the Hokage office, and Tsunade was anxious to talk to Jiraiya about recent events. Finally, the self-proclaimed super pervert entered the Hokage's office. Both Tsunade and Shizune were waiting for him. Hello, Tsunade-chan, Shizune-chan, Jiraiya said cheerfully. How are you two lovely ladies doing today? You seem awfully cheerful after you left Konoha 3 months ago, Jiraiya, Tsunade pointed out. Jiraiya sighed. I'm trying to forget about the fact of how far I am from locating Naruto. It's probably already too late. It's not. Naruto is alive and well. Jiraiya head shot up in surprise. Wait, you mean you know where the Gaki is? Where is he? Let me at that damn fool of a kidnapper. Jiraiya, Tsunade said with the slightest bit of steel in her voice. Quiet and I will explain. Jiraiya shut his trap and nodded. Tsunade sighed. Now I want to inform you that the supposed kidnapper visited me and a few Jonin last week while in this very office. What? Jiraiya shouted, only to be replied by a bash on the head from the female Hokage. Quiet, pervert. Jiraiya quickly managed to recover, but if that's true, why didn't you stop him? Interrogate him? Because 1. Naruto is unharmed, and 2. The man revealed his name was Mahotsukai Kaozu, the harbinger of Yami himself. Jiraiya was quiet for a moment. Tsunade counted down in her mind, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What? Jiraiya's shout echoed throughout Konoha. Naruto was busy training with his own father, Namikaze Minato, the diva path, when they heard a faint, what? Off in the distance. They looked at each other. Sounds like Arrow Sennin, Naruto shrugged. Must be the wind. Arrow Sennin? Minato asked, raising an eyebrow. Oh, yeah, he's your sensei, Jiraiya no Gama Sennin. There was a moment of stunned silence from Minato. Then Naruto noticed him struggling to hold in a laugh, and it just got more and more obvious until. Ahahahaha. Minato broke down laughing. Oh, Kami-sama, that's the perfect name for him. I wish I had come up with it. Naruto just gave his father a very strange look just as Kaozu and the other paths peeked around a nearby corner to see what the hell was going on. You mean that guy serves a god? Jiraiya shouted in disbelieving tone. Are you kidding me? How is that possible? He visited us for the sole purpose of letting us know that Naruto is okay and is training to become stronger, Tsunade answered calmly. He says, however, we won't be able to see him for 2 years. 2 years? Jiraiya said astonished. How did you let that slide? He presented many points that made sense and he held an air of honesty to him. To be completely honest myself, the way he spoke and presented himself made me want to believe him. Not to mention that he did say that in 2 years we'd see him again, Shizune pointed out. And that'd he be more powerful than ever before. Did he say where we were to see him? Jiraiya asked suspiciously. Tsunade nodded. He said that if we wanted to see him after 2 years to go to the ruins of Uzushiogakure. Jiraiya blinked in surprise, then his eyes narrowed. Uzushio? How did he manage that? The place is crawling with seals and traps everywhere. Seals that I would never be able to see all of before it was too late. Naruto isn't skilled at Fuinjutsu and I doubt this Kaozu could teach it to him, especially that fast. Only an Uzumaki would be able to remove those seals. Tsunade blinked. Are you saying this man is an Uzumaki? Could be. Or, Shizune interrupted, earning the 2 old teammates' attentions. He was telling the truth and he really does serve Yami. At the stare she got, Shizune decided to elaborate. Twice he has appeared and once disappeared without leaving a trace is but a split second. Last time I checked, only the Yondaime could do that, and he had the Hiraishin to boot. I noticed that he appeared from the shadows when he revealed himself last week. Obviously, this is a trait many could associate to Yami. Also, Shizune and the other Jonin could probably vouch for me on the fact that the aura he seemed to have around him was dark and powerful, yet he came off as a normal person, Tsunade continued. What does this tell you, Jiraiya? Jiraiya put his hand on his chin in thought. It does bring the situation to light a bit more if he was. How so? It means that it was most likely divine intervention that Kaozu went to Naruto. Tsunade and Shizune blinked. They hadn't even considered that. The harbinger of Yami, a god from the sacred realm, saving Naruto. Shizune tried to think of another scenario. Maybe he did it out of the kindness of his heart? I mean, Naruto was seriously injured. True, Jiraiya answered. But remember, so was Sasuke. And don't you think if that was the case he would have brought both of them back to Konoha? They were both wearing Konoha Hiteites. You'd think someone who served a god would know the Konoha leaf symbol in a heartbeat. Shizune put hand to chin. Jiraiya held a strong argument. Which begs the question. Why did Yami of all people want Naruto out of the village? Tsunade thought back to what Kaozu had said earlier. She remembered him saying something as to why he took Naruto, didn't he? I wouldn't exactly call it a kidnapping. I like to call it necessary intervention. Naruto is fine. In fact, the boy's better than fine. He's improving by leaps and bounds since I picked him up. Naruto is doing very well, however, due to recent events he can't reveal himself to you just yet. Believe me, he wants to, but he knows now is not the time. Tsunade? Jiraiya's voice came, snapping the Hokage out of her thought process. She looked up at him with an annoyed, what is it, look. Yes, you blanked out for a second. What is it? Tsunade sighed. I've been thinking back at what he said. And? There's a couple things he said that stuck out to me. One is that he called his taking Naruto as a necessary intervention. Jiraiya's eyes raised at that. So it was something that was planned by someone other than Kaozu if that was the case. Kaozu was probably just following orders, and if he was telling the truth and he was following Yami's orders, then they were in some serious trouble. Also, he mentioned that ever since he took Naruto that he's been improving by quote-unquote leaps and bounds, and that also Naruto does want to see us again, but he knows that now isn't the proper time. Jiraiya's eyes definitely widened further, so he's not only training Naruto in some way but. Tsunade nodded. Yes, one of the gods, Yami or otherwise, has given Naruto some form of duty and Kaozu, Yami's harbinger, is training him to be ready for it. There was a long pause in the room before Jiraiya spoke. You said they were in Uzushiogakure? Tsunade blinked. Yes, that's what Kaozu mentioned. I was going to send a message to the daimyo telling him what's going on and asking if I can take the Konoha 11 and their senseis to see him after 2 years is up. You do that. However, I'm going now. Jiraiya turned to leave, however, he was stopped. Jiraiya turned back to his teammate, Hokage, and blinked once before asking, yes, Tsunade-hime? He said Naruto would be ready in 2 years and Naruto agreed as well. Honestly, I think if Naruto was in any danger the Kyuubified Naruto would have already gone on a rampage by now and we'd have been notified. We haven't, however, and I am willing to trust Kaozu with Naruto's training for now. We will get him back in 2 years. I am willing to wait. But I am not, Tsunade, Jiraiya said more aggressively. I failed Naruto as a godfather for his entire life. I am not going to let some man claiming to be the harbinger of a god train him without proving to me directly that he's trustworthy. Good day, Hokage-sama. With that, Jiraiya shunshined out of the room. Tsunade sighed aggravated, Baka, I hope he knows what he's doing. I doubt it, Hokage-sama, Shizune sighed as well. Tsunade shook her head, I need some sake. Danzo sat in his office within his root compound when an Anbu appeared before him. The Anbu knelt and said, Danzo-sama, I bring news. Jiraiya of the Sennin has left again to confront the kidnapper of Uzumaki Naruto head-on. Danzo, med, to himself before dismissing the Anbu. That Anbu guard for the Hokage had been Danzo's spy and informant for nigh on 10 years now. He was the one who had overheard the Sandaime talk about how the poor Jinchuriki was in an orphanage and that was all he needed to gain more of the civilians to his side and increase his power. He used the boy as a scapegoat and every civilian and many shinobi respected him for revealing the demon incarnate to them after hiding in their village for so long. And under the guise of a young Yondaime wannabe no less. Still, karma seemed to have come back and kick him in the ass due to their predicament. The daimyo was insanely furious at the kidnapping of the brat. He and his fellow elders and councilmen were now forced into heavy taxes due to this. Still Danzo had managed to get a foothold still in authority and amplified that. Despite their losses, the elders and the civilians held just as much power, if not more, than before. And even though Konoha lost its edge over the other villages in the Jinchuriki department, he was sure he could get Sasuke to the level of a Jinchuriki. This would be especially so when he pulled all the strings to fulfill the requirements to unlock Sasuke's Mangekyo Sharingan. With Sasuke backing him up, it would be easy to convince the council, which the civilian side of was bidding for more and more power over Konoha's daily rituals, to make him Hokage when he convinced Tsunade-hime to retire. Then, of course, there was the most recent issue that had appeared. The supposed kidnapper who went by the name of Mahotsukai Kaozu had appeared in the Hokage's office without either the Hokage, her assistant, the Anbu, or the 3 Jonin trained in tracking knowing he was there until he wanted them to. This posed a serious problem, which only grew more serious with the man's claim of being Yami's harbinger. The boy is being trained by someone so skilled, Danzo thought as he looked over the situation again. He will no doubt become much more powerful. And with him wanting to become Hokage and having the backing of the Shinobi Council and the daimyo makes this very dangerous ground we are treading. Especially since that with this man training him claiming to be a servant of Yami makes the situation worse if he were to go against us. He seems to be on the same side as that demon brat and with him on the Hokage's side we'd best not let ourselves get discovered. However, the recent news of Jiraiya ending off to where the two were seemed promising. Hopefully that bumbling fool Jiraiya will be able to convince the demon to either leave his sensei or convince them both to come to Konoha. The latter was better because Danzo could then use his Sharingan to attempt to control the demon. With the Kyuubi Jinchuriki under his control and with the harbinger of Yami likely to follow his lead no matter what he and Konoha would be unstoppable. And even if Jiraiya fails, Danzo thought evilly, I will worm my way into the group that heads out to meet them and then that brat will be easy pickings. Danzo chuckled darkly to himself before he walked out of the hidden compound to prepare for tomorrow's council meeting. Hinata was training by herself in one of the more isolated training grounds of Konoha. She had promised Naruto not to reveal the technique he had given her to practice and she was determined to not let anyone find out what she was practicing. She always had her Byakugan active to keep a lookout for those coming to the training grounds. That was good training in itself. She could hardly believe the technique she had been given to her by Naruto. And he had trusted she could understand the instructions of the technique and could do it herself only made her feel happier that her new boyfriend believed in her so much. Boyfriend, she thought blushing. I feel a pleasant shiver going down my spine every time I say or think that about Naruto. Her friends had seen that she had been in an oddly good mood lately. She passed it off with a half-truth that she had gotten a new technique to practice and it was a very good one. She never told what his was and she had been training with a second new technique to show them if they asked so that she didn't have to reveal the technique Naruto had given her. Speaking of the technique Naruto had given to her, she had made very good progress on that technique. Nowhere near as fast as Naruto had done on the technique. Hell, he had gotten it down by this time. However, she reminded herself she wasn't practicing it as often as he did, nor was she the great achiever of all things impossible that he always seemed to be either. Despite it being slow, she was excited to learn this technique. Only a few people had learned it up to this point and she was going to be one of the maybe 6 people who had this technique in their inventory of techniques. And since Naruto loved using this technique, she was excited to get to know it as well. She sighed as she kept trying to complete her task. It was proving more difficult than it seemed. How can something so simple on paper be so difficult in real life? Come on, pop. As if on cue, the object in her hand popped, spraying water all around. She gasped and then, after a pause, jumped for joy. She was now reassured that Naruto's belief in her was not in vain. In that one instant, whatever lack of confidence she had all but vanished, all thanks to Naruto and the technique she'd been given. Yes. That water balloon finally popped. Finally. Hinata took a deep breath of relief before she commented to herself, I think that's enough for today. Tomorrow I'll get the rubber ball. Hinata calmed down slowly and thought, Naruto, I'm getting ever closer to mastering the technique you entrusted to me. I swear on my clan's honor that I will not let that trust be for nothing. Kakashi-san. Kakashi had been walking down the streets of Konoha with his normal orange book in his hands when had heard his name being called. When he had turned to whomever had called his name, he saw Kurenai walking up to him. Oh, hello, Kurenai-san, he greeted casually. What do you need? Kurenai looked at him for a moment before saying, mind walking with me? I need to ask you something. Kakashi raised his eyebrow before nodding his head and putting his book away. As they began walking, Kakashi asked, so, what is it you need? It's about Hinata. Kakashi raised an eyebrow again. He knew Hinata had begun to train the hardest of the Konoha 10, or 11 as it would be in a couple months, due to her crush on his old student. He had grown to respect the no longer so shy Kunoichi for her ignoring the demon inside of him and just seeing the boy who kept the Biju at bay. Curious, he asked, what about Hinata? You know she has been practicing a lot, mainly by herself, after team practice is over, right? Kakashi nodded. Well, ever since last week, she's been very happy for someone so determined to get Naruto back after his kidnapping. Kakashi almost flinched at the word kidnapping, since he was now convinced by the man that this wasn't true. He had come to realize that during their first encounter, the reason the man, now named as Kaozu, gave him that no-contact blow was because he had no time to sit and try to reason with him, since the other members of the retrieval team would have arrived by that time. And that was something Kaozu probably didn't want to deal with. Still, he knew Kurenai was right. Hinata hadn't been happy, nor did he think she would be happy until she was sure Naruto was safe. What's her excuse? Kakashi asked. She says she's got a very good new technique she's been practicing, but the fact is she's as happy as Naruto is after learning a technique. I don't think she'd be that happy until after Naruto was safe. Something is going on and she won't tell us. Kakashi, med, before asking, and what do you want me to do? In your years as a shinobi you've been on many missions, I'd imagine, with Hyuga clan members, Kurenai began. Much more experience than I was hoping you could try to see what technique she's practicing. Kakashi thought about it for a moment. I don't know. If she's that intent on making sure the technique stays a secret, I don't think there's much I can do. Besides, who's to say she won't tell us eventually? Maybe this technique she got from someone could really help us and she wants it to be a surprise. Trying to worry less Kurenai. If she starts to get really strange, let me know. Kurenai seemed dissatisfied but knew that was probably the best she was going to get for now and nodded. As she walked off, however, Kakashi began to think. Last week. That was when Kaozu appeared to us in the Hokage's office. Is it possible that he visited her as well? Or is someone else involved? Kakashi paused a moment before a thought struck him. Someone like Naruto. The more Kakashi thought about it, the more it made sense. Obviously Naruto had trained under Kyozu for 3 months and his new sensei's skills at hiding in the shadows were just incredible. Added to the mix Naruto's unimaginable ability to make the impossible possible, and there's a good chance he mastered some of Kaosu's stealth abilities. While Kyozu was here, Naruto could have very well had come with him. He remembered Kaosu's words about Naruto wanting to come back, but knowing now wasn't the time. It's quite possible he eavesdropped on them to see how they were doing. And it also probably means, Kakashi thought, that if he overheard them talk about her he'd have learned of Hinata's feelings for him. It was true, with Hinata's newfound resolve due to her feelings for the blonde, the Konoha 10 had begun to talk about her a lot. Mainly in an respecting and dare he say admiring way. If Naruto heard that he had been oblivious to such things for so long, it was obvious, despite knowing he probably shouldn't, would have gone to see her. If that were the case, they probably had become good friends very fast with that. It would easily explain Hinata's sudden change in character. But that still leaves the issue of the technique she was given, Kakashi thought. If my theory is correct, it probably means the technique was given to her by Naruto. But what technique could it be? Kakashi, still in deep thought, decided, I need to discuss this with the Hokage. She'll want to know about this. With that, the copy nin shun shinned away. Tsunade sat in her office dealing with what she called the Hokage Infinity paperwork curse. It never seemed to freaking end. She took another swig of her sake before she heard a knock at the door. Eager for a break from her paperwork, she called out, enter. With that, the door opened as Shizune let Kakashi into the office. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. What do you need, Hitaki? Earlier, Kurenai came up to me and asked me to watch one of her teammates due to a major change of character. I told her if it worsened I'd investigate, but it was something she mentioned during the conversation that brought my attention. I thought it necessary to come talk to you. Oh? Tsunade asked curiously. And who is this student of hers? One Hyuga Hinata, Hokage-sama. Tsunade's eyes widened in surprise. She knew Hinata had been in love with Naruto and had been the most determined out of all the Konoha 10 to train to fight Naruto's kidnapper, and what is wrong with her? Kurenai-san mentioned that she had been unusually happy. As happy as Naruto would have been after mastering a new technique or getting a free stash of ramen. A happiness she thought she'd never see from Hinata unless Naruto had been brought back safely. And what did Hinata tell her? That she had a new technique that she was excited to learn. Tsunade cocked an eyebrow. Hinata isn't a person I consider getting that excited over a technique. Me neither. So what got your interest in this whole thing? The fact that apparently this all started last week. At first it didn't register in the Hokage's mind. Then she thought about it. Last week they had received a visit from the man who was Yami's harbinger. The same man who took Naruto. You're suggesting Kyozu visited her as well? Tsunade asked curiously. I thought that at first. At first? Until I thought this up. Naruto has obviously been training for the past 3 months with Kyozu, right? The man is a espionage genius in his own league. He snuck in and out of a shinobi village and snuck into and stayed hidden in the Hokage's office for our entire meeting while 3 tracking experts were present in there. Naruto is amazing for being able to pull the seemingly impossible. We considered Kaosu's ability of stealth impossible. Do you not think Naruto would learn some of this stealth as well? Tsunade stared at Kakashi in disbelief. Are you trying to say that Naruto was here? Kyozu said that Naruto wanted to visit but knew now was not the time. However, that does not mean he didn't drop by to hear how we were doing. With how much the Konoha 10 has been talking about Hinata's feelings for him, I have no doubt he would have heard about this and sought to fix the mistakes he had made. Tsunade leaned back. He's making some very good arguments here. Was Naruto here as the village when Kyozu was present? I do recall Konohamaru and his team mentioning that the gate guards has seen a suspicious young man with long black hair and a younger boy with a bandana and shades. Could that have been them? There's more. Kakashi continued, getting Tsunade's attention. I believe the technique she is learning might have been from Naruto if my theory is correct. It's probably why she hasn't revealed what it is yet. Tsunade nodded understanding, because Naruto asked her not to. There was a silence before Tsunade spoke. Well, whatever it is, we won't need to worry about it. Kakashi's eyes widened and Tsunade laughed. What? Did you expect me to order you to spy on her to figure out what the technique was, or if it really was Naruto who visited her? If it is true, and it was Naruto, I see no reason having to worry about it. She'll reveal when she's able to. 2 years from now all will be revealed. Hatake Kakashi. I trust you can wait if I can. Kakashi hesitated for a brief moment before nodding. Hi, Hokage-sama. Tsunade returned the nod. If that is all, you may leave. Hey, Otou-san. Yes, Naruto? Minato asked, looking at his son. How did you and Okawa-san meet? Minato and Kushina looked at each other. The recently reunited family were sitting in a small living room in the recently rebuilt Azukichi Tower with Kyozu and the other paths. The group had decided to bring Uzu Shiogakure back to its former glory, and though they were prepared to start building the old-fashioned way, Hashirama provided the solution with his wood release and, with his wife's and Kushina's guidance, were able to resurrect Uzu Shiogakure back to the way it was before it was attacked. It was truly a stunning sight to behold. The city was very beautiful now that it had been raised from its ruined ashes like a phoenix. Well, Minato said, thinking back at old memories. We met at the Konoha Shinobi Academy. She disliked me at first, but after I saved her after she was kidnapped by Kumo Shinobi, she fell for me. I eventually returned her feelings and we were married. It was mainly due to him proving to me he wasn't a wimp and him liking the one thing I hated about myself, Kushina said, adding her own 2 cents. And what was that, Okawa-san? My red hair. Why did you hate your hair? I think it looks pretty cool. Thank you, you're the second person to compliment it. The first was your father. Everyone else made fun of me for it. Isn't love grand? Mito commented as she lovingly held onto her husband. Then she got a mischievous smirk that made Naruto sweat a bit. Isn't that right, Naruto? Oh man, not this again. Naruto yelled, his face turning red with embarrassment. It's not fair. It's 7 against 1 here. Don't you mean 8 against 1? Kit? Came Kurama's snickering voice from Naruto's mindscape. Shut it, furball. Naruto screamed mentally. Naruto then heard snickering and turned to see Kyozu holding back his laughing. What's so funny, Yuke-han-sensei? Nothing, lover boy, Kyozu grinned. It's just that I think 7. No, 8 on 1 is completely fair. So you think you can stand against myself, Kurama, and my paths? Naruto grinned. Kyozu shrugged, maybe, maybe not. All I know is that all is fair in love and war. Ain't that the truth? Kushina giggled and passed an mischievous glance at Minato, who sweated a bit. Why are you all teasing me about this? Naruto asked frantically, waving his arms. Because you make it so easy, lover boy, Kyozu smirked. Yeah, I don't know how it's easy for, Yuke-han-sensei. You've obviously never loved someone. Silence flooded the room as Kyozu's smirk almost instantly vanished to a frown. He tilted his head down so that strands of his hair covered his eyes. What did you just say? Kyozu asked in a forced whisper. The paths instantly saw the area around him slowly grow darker, but Naruto took no heed of these warning signs. I said you obvious have never loved someone, crunch. Naruto flew back into a wall at lightning speed after a massive blow practically shattered his skull. Naruto held his face in pain. He looked up enraged. What the hell was that for you, Ba? Naruto stopped dead. In front of him was Kyozu, however, the background behind him was obviously much darker than before. A black, fiendish aura danced around his body and his midnight blue eyes were slowly turning crimson with rage. Even the 6 paths in the room couldn't help but be a little afraid of the aura coming off of him. He certainly lives up to his title. The sheer power and intimidation radiating off of him is insane, Hiruzen thought. He, along with the other paths, were worried about Naruto. While they knew Naruto had gone too far, they weren't expecting this reaction from the usually calm, happy-go-lucky guy he usually was. They prepared themselves to step in if necessary. He bent down to Naruto's level and used his hand to force Naruto against the dent in the wall. Listen here, kid, and listen well, Kyozu said in a dark voice that threatened Naruto with extreme pain if he dared to speak. Don't you ever say that to me again. Do I make MSYELF clear? Naruto, shaken by his old sensei's sudden actions, could only nod. Hi, Mahotsukai-sensei. With that, he let Naruto go and left the building, leaving his comrades wondering why that one phrase pissed him off so badly. Naruto got up. He looked sad. He had upset one of his friends and now he was going to fix it. Naruto began to walk towards the exit. Naruto-san, where are you going? Tobirama asked, though he already knew the answer. To find him. I need to apologize. With that, Naruto left the room. His paths followed. Naruto and his paths found Kaozu on the roof of one of the westernmost buildings in the village. He was holding a picture in his hand. Upon closer inspection, Naruto noticed that there were two people in it. One was Kaozu himself, though not dressed in his normal black garbs but in a more regal black and gold houri and armor. The woman seemed a little younger than he was. She had bright blue eyes which also seemed to have a touch of gray in them. Her hair was also an odd color. It was snow white. Her hair was shorter, only about shoulder length, and she wore a nice gray and blue kimono. They were both smiling in this picture. Naruto also noticed that Kaozu's hand was on her far shoulder and they were very close together. Naruto sadly looked at his sensei's state. It was easy to tell the young man was trying to hold back his tears but was only moments away from breaking. Naruto paused a moment before speaking. Who was she? There was a very long pause before Kaozu sighed. Her name was Mahotsukai Shinko Yasana. She was my wife. Naruto and his paths tensed. Naruto felt really bad now for what he said. But he also heard him say was as well. Naruto swallowed. What happened to her? There was another long pause before Kaozu answered through sniffs. The phrase he spoke hit a chord in all of them. I failed. With that, Kaozu broke in sobs. Naruto had never seen him like this. Minato and Kushina looked at each other. Having lost the other before because of the Kyuubi attack, they knew what it was like to lose their spouse, as did Mito when Hashirama died. They knew that that experience was outright spirit-breaking and filled with sorrow. They wouldn't wish such sorrow upon even their worst enemy. Slowly, Naruto walked over to him and put a hand on his ex-sensei's shoulder in a comforting manner. The paths soon joined in. Finally, I made it, Jiraiya said as he approached Uzushiogakure. It was still hidden through some fog that covered the area and he was still on alert for any of the seals and traps in the area. Don't worry, Naruto. When I get there, this so-called harbinger of Yami is going to get a Rasengan straight through the skull. I don't believe this man's words. Not even for a second. Finally, Uzushiogakure came into view and Jiraiya stifled a gasp. Before him was the ruins of Uzushiogakure. Minus the ruins part, however. It was fully restored. It was as if the city had never fallen in the first place. Jiraiya couldn't help but stare wide-eyed. This is impossible. Not at all, Sennin. Jiraiya spun around to see a man cloaked and standing there behind him. Jiraiya's eyes narrowed. So you're the one who kidnapped Naruto? The man shook his head and groaned. Really? Didn't I just call it necessary intervention? If Jiraiya could have sworn he saw the man blink under his hood. Wait, aren't you I don't know 2 years early? Jiraiya growled. You'd think I'd take your word for it? That I'd just go along with you schemes because you made yourself seem honest? No, I don't think so. Jiraiya readied a kunai that caused Kaozu to smirk under his cloak. You want to fight me, Ero Sennin? Jiraiya's eyes widened at that. How do you know that name? I trained Mr. Loverboy, Kaozu said matter-of-factually. He told me his little nickname for you. I works very well. Loverboy? Jiraiya thought, but it was broken when the man continued. Well, if you want to fight I won't stop you. Just then, Kaozu held out his hand and a trail of shadowy air slowly formed on his hand. It streamed out to form a scythe-like shape. Kaozu clenched down and the shadows immediately vanished and a large black-handled scythe was left in its place. Add to the cloak and hood, Jiraiya could have sworn he was fighting a reaper from the western myths that he had heard in his travels. Just know, Jiraiya no Gama Sennin, what you were getting into. The self-proclaimed hermit could feel the devilish gleam coming from under the man's hood and he mentally prepared himself for the fight of his life. Naruto was taking a break from his training with his paths. He had finished sealed training with his mother not too long ago and was getting ready for chakra-controlled training with Tobirama. This training session was always the toughest for Naruto due to the ungodly massive chakra CPA city due to his lineage, the Kyuubi, and now the fact that the Rikudo's spirit within him is now awakened. But, if anyone could teach him it'd be Tobirama. The man's chakra control was perfect after all. Currently, Naruto was sitting inside the Azukage's tower relaxing. Tobirama, Hashirama, and Hiruzen were there with him. Mito and Kushina were in the Azukage's office rewriting documents which were destroyed in the genocide of the Uzumaki years before. Minato himself was heading to the wave to gather more supplies for his wife and her relative, who needed more ink and paper. That still left one person unaccounted for, however. "Where's Yuke-Han-sensei?" Naruto asked his paths. They looked at each other and shrugged. "I don't know, Naruto-san," Hashirama confessed. "I remember hearing him say something about watching the gate and then he left," Hiruzen pointed out. There was a pause before Hashirama spoke. "You don't think?" Boom! The sound of an explosion filled the air, causing the new Sennin and his paths to jump up in surprise. Within an instant, Mito and Kushina charged downstairs and Minato appeared thanks to a Hiraishin he had placed in the room. What the hell just happened? Minato shouted alert along with Kushina and Mito. "We don't know, but we have a feeling it has to do with Kyozu being at the front gate," Tobirama explained. "Wait, you mean someone is here?" Kushina asked. "Didn't Kyozu say, not for 2 years?" Apparently, it was ignored, Naruto huffed. He then walked to the door. "Come on, let's go." Jiraiya was panting. This guy was definitely no slouch. The guy was matching up against him easily. The worst part was that his opponent didn't really seem all that winded. If he was hiding it very well. "I must admit, you're putting up a good fight, old man." Jiraiya scoffed. "I'm not that old. I must admit your skill with that scythe of yours is incredible." It was no joke either. Moments ago, Jiraiya had tried to use the Rasengan against him, but Kyozu had spun his scythe blade straight into the spiraling ball. This caused it to detonate before Jiraiya was ready and caused him to fly back. Kyozu, who was at a good distance due to the reach of the scythe, managed to brace himself for the explosion and managed to keep himself firmly in place. Despite Jiraiya thinking this man was lying about being Yami's harbinger, there was no doubt this man was very good. He had effectively used the Gamma Sennin's own attack against him, and the Rasengan of all attacks. That was impressive. Jiraiya smirked, "But it means nothing. I am one of the 3 Sennin and I haven't even entered Sage mode yet. You are just somebody who claims to be Yami's harbinger." It was then that Naruto and his 6 paths arrived on top of the village gate. They had just managed to hear Jiraiya's claim. Naruto's clenched his fist. "Arrow Sennin? What's he doing here?" Obviously, he didn't want to wait, Hashirama answered. Him calling out Kyozu-san like that, Mito began to point out. He's going to get himself seriously injured. "Yeah, poor Arrow-sensei," Minato sighed. "Claims?" Kyozu asked, releasing some killer intent upon the poor pervert. "I don't claim anything." Jiraiya then became painfully aware of the surrounding area. It was as if something large moved in front of the sun over the village. The entire area was growing ever darker and a fiendish black aura began to swarm around Kyozu himself. "But if you're so intent to find out what I say is true," Kyozu continued with a devilish smirk painted on his face, "then get ready to experience it firsthand." Jiraiya suddenly felt a wave of pressure hit him. He felt like he was wearing a very heavy set of training weights, but Jiraiya knew he couldn't falter. Not now. He made his decision on what to do. "Kachiyose no jutsu," Jiraiya called out as he slammed his palm into the ground, summoning the 2 elderly toads Shima and Fukasaku beside him. "Jiraiya!" Fukasaku cried. "What's going on here? Why were we summoned?" "Sorry, Pa," Jiraiya replied. "I need both of you right now. As much as it's a lady repellent, I need Sage mode against this guy." The 2 toads looked at the dark and powerful man across from Jiraiya. Both their eyes narrowed. "Jiraiya? Who is that?" "That man is named Mahotsukai Kyozu. He claims to be the harbinger of Yami." The toads blinked and scanned the man again. They swallowed. "Jiraiya. Shima began. "He isn't claiming it. He's telling the truth." "What? She's right," the male great sage toad replied. "I can sense his energy. Not quite chakra, but very similar, not to mention with a divine attribute. A dark divine attribute, but divine no less." Jiraiya swallowed hard before he and the 2 toads stared down the dark man before them. Fukasaku let out a breath. "We'll help you go into Sage mode, but don't expect this to end well, Jiraiya." Jiraiya nodded and did a couple of hand signs. "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu." 3 shadow clones appeared and Jiraiya ordered, "Keep him at bay." The 3 shadow clones charged at the harbinger, who merely evaded them. Kyozu didn't try to stop Jiraiya. He really wanted to fight him in his Sage mode. As the shadow clones distracted Yami's harbinger, the two toads hopped onto the man's shoulders and shouted, "Senpo, Ryosei no Jutsu." With that they fused to Jiraiya's shoulders and Jiraiya entered Sage mode. His nose got bigger, warts covered his body, and his white hair grew longer. Toad eyes also replaced his own as well. "Alright," Jiraiya shouted. "Let's go." Naruto raised his eyebrow. Otou-san. What just happened to Ero Sennin?" "He just entered Sage mode," Minato answered. "Sage mode?" "Yes. Gathering natural energy from the surrounding area allows him to transform into Sage mode. However, he was never able to do it completely. So, he has to summon those two elderly Sage toads to fuse with him and stabilize his nature chakra. So, in other words, his Sage mode is imperfect." "Right." Naruto med and then went back to watching the fight. Jiraiya shouted as he charged at Kaozu, attempting to give him a mighty display of his taijutsu abilities. Kaozu dodged two punches before swinging his scythe. Jiraiya managed to move but the swing did cut open a gash in his shirt. "Crap, that was close," Jiraiya thought. Okay, close-range fighting is not a good idea with a guy skillfully wielding a scythe. Kaozu smirked. "What's wrong, Sennin? Too close for comfort?" Jiraiya glared back, "Just making a plan of attack." "Of course you are." "Oh yeah?" Jiraiya taunted, preparing an attack. "Take this, Senpo." "Gomon." The Sennin and two toads all opened their mouths. Jiraiya fired a stream of oil out of his mouth, Fukasaku fired out a stream of wind, and Shima fired out a steam of fire. The huge inferno flooded towards Kaozu. The harbinger seemed unimpressed. Naruto and his paths grew wide-eyed as the blazing inferno washed toward him like a tsunami. Kaozu sighed and held out his hand. "Kage Majutsu. Yami no Bakuha." A blast of darkness shot from Kaozu's hand in a straight line towards the Sennin. Waves of shadowy air rippled off the blast of darkness as it traveled. These waves dispersed the flames of the inferno and caused it to fade away. The blast itself struck the Sennin, knocking him far back before the attack vanished as it ended. The Sennin was flying through the air before catching himself quite a ways back. The attack didn't leave any mark or anything, but the Sennin could have sworn it was almost like getting hit with one of Tsunade's light punches, except with a fist about 3 times bigger. That was no D-rank Jutsu either, Jiraiya thought. I've never even heard of Majutsu before, but it looks like it doesn't need hand signs. This could be a problem. Jiraiya growled, "Get it, doesn't matter, short-ranged or long-range." He again went through the hand signs, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 2 shadow clones of Jiraiya formed next to him in a puff of smoke and the two charged at him. Kaozu shook head. He quickly sidestepped one clone and expelled him with a swing of his scythe. He quickly turned around and gathered energy into his free hand. Kage Majutsu, Kokuso. Kaozu swung his energy-filled hand in an upwards arc, causing a spike made of black energy to shoot up from the ground and impale the other clone, causing him to dispel as well. Kaozu grinned and turned to face his opponent, smirking with a face that screamed, "Is that all you've got?" His reward for the smug act was for a Rasengan to be delivered right into his skull, forcing him into the ground. It detonated. Boom, boom, cow! Naruto began to shout but was stopped by his father. His father gave him this look, "Wait. Let's watch and see if he can pull through." Naruto hesitated for a moment before nodding to his diva path. Jiraiya had jumped up and was catching his breath. He finally had a break and he, at the very least, had done some serious damage to his opponent. He was about to straight his back to observe the damage when he heard a voice, "Nice shot." Jiraiya's as well as the toad's eyes widened as he looked up. Kaozu was slowly getting out of the crater he had created with his Rasengan. The man's cloak had been heavily damaged and he could now see the man's face, oddly colored eyes and all. Kaozu was smirking. "I have to admit that one hurt a lot." Kaozu stood up and tossed away his damaged cloak. He revealed his long black hair and a torn sleeveless and black gi. A dark gray sash was tied around his waist. The man slammed his scythe into the ground before cracking his knuckles. "I think now I should get a bit more serious and show you some more advanced Kage Majutsu. Don't you agree, Gamma Sennin?" Kaozu's taunt caused Jiraiya to tense, especially when Kaozu picked up his scythe and started spinning it. "Kage Majutsu. Yami no Shio. Kaozu stopped spinning his scythe and slammed the top of it into the ground. A wave of a black smoke-like substance washed out and coated the surrounding area much like a water falling into a basin. Kaozu leaned back up and smirked, and then fell straight into the blackness like if he was on top of a lake and just stopped his chakra from allowing him to water walk. Jiraiya stifled another gasp and began to look around, wondering where he was. Just then, Jiraiya felt his subconscious screaming at him to move. Jiraiya jumped away just as Kaozu erupted from the black smoke beneath him, swinging his scythe in the process. Kaozu landed from his jump and started to swing continuously at the Sennin before the hermit sidestepped around ready to Rasengan. When he was about to use the attack, Kaozu vanished into the blackened air at their ankles yet again. Jiraiya could only dispel the jutsu and wait. Hiruzen couldn't help but grin. That is certainly a very useful technique. Minato chuckled. Yeah, it's like having thousands of Hiraishin seals on the floor of a battlefield, only they can't be erased and you can hide as well. Good analogy, dear. Kushina grinned as she continued to watch her husband's sensei struggle against the harbinger of Yami. Why thank you. Jiraiya instinctual moved again as Kaozu shot from ground beside him. This time, however, Kaozu didn't follow him. He just smirked. Maybe I should make this a bit more interesting. What do you think, Gamma Sennin? What are you going to do? Jiraiya taunted. Fart out smoke? Kaozu chuckled a bit at Jiraiya's taunt before snapping his fingers. Instantly, 4 man-sized cyclones of shadowy air erupted in from seemingly random place in the black-covered battleground and began to slowly move around the area. Kaozu smugly grinned at Jiraiya one last time before stepping into one of them and vanished. Jiraiya immediately went on alert. Great. It isn't bad enough that he could vanish into the floor, but now I have to pay attention to these moving pillars now? This is getting better by the minute. Jiraiya quickly dodged another swing as Kaozu appeared and disappeared. Damn it, this is getting old. Jiraiya then challenged. Alright, Mr. Harbinger. Come out here and we'll finish this right now. The cyclones instantly vanished, causing Jiraiya to blink in surprise. Unbeknownst to him, so did his godson and the paths observing from nearby. So be it. Jiraiya spun around. Kaozu was standing a ways away from him. His scythe was planted firmly on the ground. Jiraiya got into a fighting stance and Kaozu grinned. He raised up his free arm to it, pointed straight into the air. Kage Magistu. Kage no Hiso. Kaozu said as he pointed his arm at the Sennin. As he did so, dozens of black, spearheaded chains erupted from behind him and arced towards the poor hermit. Jiraiya, Naruto, and the paths' eyes widened in horror and a number of them pierced through the Sennin's body. To their surprise, however, the chains didn't leave a wound or draw blood or anything. However, Jiraiya suddenly felt the chains retract towards their sender and the spearheads caused the unwilling hermit to fly right towards Kaozu. Jiraiya's face made contact with Kaozu's open palm with such force that the shadowy air around Kaozu's feet dispersed. Kaozu grinned evilly. Good night. Kaozu shouted as he slammed the poor man's head into the ground with such force that even Naruto and his paths could feel the shockwave caused by the impact. The Rikudo Sennin reborn and his paths all winced. Ouch, Naruto said in sympathy of his once sensei. That has got to hurt, Minato agreed. When the dust settled and the shadowy air finally vanished, they all saw an unconscious Jiraiya. The toads were gone and his sage mode was deactivated. Kaozu let out a sigh. It was fun, old man, but sadly it's over now. With that, Naruto and his paths appeared besides him. Naruto raised an eyebrow. I trust you didn't do anything too damaging? Kaozu grinned. Might have killed a few brain cells with that last one, but other than that I think he's fine. His companion's sweat dropped and looked at him. Kaozu looked at Naruto. So, should I send him back to the Hokage? Naruto shook his head. No, I think he does deserve to know what's going on. Kaozu blinked. And why is that exactly? Naruto grinned. Jiraiya's in charge of a massive spy network, UK Han Sensei. I recall you know that never well, right? Kaozu's responses was a stifled groan and him rolling his eyes in annoyance. If he knows and trusts us, we can get some information from him just as Konoha does. Those present widened their eyes. That was a very good point. He could provide them all with valuable information to help them over the next couple of years. Kaozu nodded. I'll take him inside. Jiraiya groaned as he got up. He had a massive headache. What the hell happened? Oh, yeah, Jiraiya thought solemnly. I got my ass handed to me by that guy who took Naruto. Jiraiya clenched his fists in rage. Damn it. He slammed his fist beside him but was surprised to find he hit something soft. Jiraiya looked down at what he hit. It was a blanket. He quickly realized he was in a bed. He looked around to find himself in a room he didn't recognize. Jiraiya groaned. Well, isn't this lovely? Well, sensei, came a voice from in front of him. Jiraiya looked up and gaped at what he saw. There was Minato, standing there, alive, right before his eyes. But he noticed something strikingly different about him. One was that he had metal piercings on his face. The other was that he had purple eyes with 6 circles rippling out of a dot in the center. The Rinnegan, Jiraiya realized with a gasp. Minato smirked, glad to see you awake. With that, Jiraiya fainted. Minato blinked then shook his head, or glad to see you were awake. A few moments later. Jiraiya groaned and sat up again. What kind of fucked up dream was that? I thought I saw my student alive and with the Rinnegan. You did. Jiraiya's eyes widened and he looked up in shock. Minato, but how? Relax and I'll explain. Jiraiya nodded and took a deep breath. Minato returned the nod. To answer your question, I am alive because I have been brought back to be one of the 6 paths of a bearer of the Rinnegan. Jiraiya blinked. Care to elaborate? Minato nodded. A bearer of the Rinnegan has 6 paths that can be utilized by him or her in addition to having control over the basic 5 elements. These paths are the Diva path, the Asura path, the Animal path, the Human path, the Preta path, and the Naraka path. Each has their own special ability. With me so far? Jiraiya nodded and Minato continued. A Rinnegan user can use metal piercings like the ones that I have in me right now to control 6 bodies of his or hers choosing, and each body can control one of these paths. By channeling chakra into these piercings and into these bodies, he or she can control them. So if they are controlled bodies, how are you? Well, you. My guess is Kaozu had something to do with it. He's the harbinger of Yami. I assume he did something. What he did I'm not sure. Jiraiya nodded. So, which path are you? Minato smiled. I am the Diva path. I have the ability to manipulate gravity. And this is in addition to my old abilities. Jiraiya's eyes widened in surprise. Minato chuckled at his sensei's face. Oh, you haven't heard anything. Just wait until you hear who the other paths are and their own abilities are. Jiraiya looked at his student. Who are they? Minato's mischievous smirk caused Jiraiya to sweat a bit. First, the animal path is my wife, Uzumaki Kushina. She has the ability to summon an animal at will without needing a contract. Jiraiya's eyes widened, but he knew Minato was just getting started. Next is the Asura path, who is Uzumaki Mito, wife of the Shodai. She has the ability to summon and utilize any weapon of her choosing. After that we have Senju Hashirama, the Shodai himself, as the Preta path. He had the ability to absorb any and all chakra-based attacks. The Nidame, Senju Tobarama, is the human path. He has the ability to read minds and rip people's souls from their bodies. Jiraiya was looking at Minato's face in pure and utter shock. 5 shinobi, each easily S-ranked to sulfur monosulfide ranked, were now paths for a Rinnegan user. The only one of which he had ever seen was Nagato. But Jiraiya couldn't see how Nagato would have gotten these bodies for his paths. Then again, it could have been Kaozu. Jiraiya then realized Minato had missed something. What about the Naraka path? Minato smiled. The Naraka path is very interesting. That path has the ability to summon the King of Hell. The King of Hell? Yes, and it by far has one of the most useful abilities out of all of us. The King of Hell gives the user the abilities of restoration and interrogation. It has the ability to interrogate people, and if they lie they get their souls devoured by the king, and the ability to raise any of the paths back up should they fall. Jiraiya gaped. Minato was indeed right. Such abilities did make this path incredibly important to them. Who is the Naraka path? Minato smirked yet again. Your sensei, Sarutobi Hiruzen, the Sandame Hokage. Jiraiya leaned back in shock. His sensei was back and was one of the paths of this Rinnegan user. One who he thought was Nagato. So where's Nagato? Minato blinked. Who? Wait, Nagato isn't the Rinnegan user? Who's Nagato, sensei? He was a Rinnegan user I found and trained during the Second Shinobi War. He was an orphan in Omegacure. Minato looked at his sensei in surprise and he could feel Naruto and the other path's surprise as well. But if Nagato isn't the Rinnegan user who summoned you, then who is? Minato laughed, he's my son, Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto. Jiraiya was instantly on his feet. Naruto? How? Minato bopped his sensei on the head. Calm down, sensei. Screaming won't get your question answered. Jiraiya settled down and Minato continued, but seriously, how did Naruto get the Rinnegan? Simple, Minato answered as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. He is the reincarnation of the Rikudo Sennin. He and the founder of ninjutsu are one and the same person. Jiraiya was gaping. He could have sworn Nagato was the sage's reincarnation. But now in truth it was Naruto? But what did that make Nagato? I think I need to sit down. Minato nodded as Jiraiya took a seat on the bed. Sensei, Minato began, getting the Gamma Sennin's attention. I cannot let you see Naruto and the other paths just yet. And before you argue, let me explain. It was obvious that you weren't going to listen to Kyozu, so one of the paths or Naruto had to talk to you. Naruto isn't supposed to reveal himself as the Rikudo Sennin's reincarnation just yet, so we paths talked about it and decided I'd be the one to talk with you. I see, Jiraiya said sadly but with understanding. Don't worry, sensei, you'll see us all again in 2 years' time. But before then, we need to ask you a favor. Jiraiya blinked and looked at his student. What is it, Minato? We need you to inform us of the outside world with your spy network. We'd like to know what's going on to make sure we're up to date when 2 years passes. We are going to be very isolated here, so information won't really get to us. You think you can do that? Yes, Minato, I understand, Jiraiya nodded. He got up and gathered his gear, but before he left he turned to Minato. Goodbye, Minato. Could you please tell Naruto that I'm sorry for not being there for him? Minato nodded, of course, sensei. And, could you tell Kyozu I'm sorry for doubting him? No need. Jiraiya turned to see Kyozu, re-cloaked and all, leaning against a wall nearby. I'm used to people not believing me at first. I can't exactly blame them though. You did good out there though. Best fight I've had in a while. Jiraiya chuckled. Anytime I guess. See ya. With that, the Gamma Sennin jumped out of the village hidden of the whirlpool. He wouldn't return again for 2 years.
That's all for now. If you want to see next part, then please like this video and subscribe my channel. Thank you.